Dunstan here.
Phillip here.
Lorick here.
David here.
Guzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Approval of minutes from February 13th. Have you all had a chance to look them over? There are no corrections or omissions. Motion?
Seifert moves that we approve the minutes of February 13th, 2018.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Dunstan, aye.
Phil abstain.
Lorick, aye.
David, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler aye.
All right. Moves us on to significant common council actions. Carrie.
Council approved the following: an ordinance rezoning the properties at 410 and 500 West Drexel Avenue from M1 Manufacturing to B4 Highway Business. There was no change to the C1 Shoreland Wetland Conservancy District, the FF Flood Fringe District, or the FW Floodway District. Approved a resolution for a certified survey map for Brian and Jenny Stromowski for the property at 1825 East Drexel Avenue. A resolution authorizing and directing execution of a lease by and between the City of Oak Creek and DTS Mixed Use LLC for public restroom facilities at Drexel Town Square. Passed a motion to enter into an agreement with Houseo Levine Associates for the amount of $159,900 to complete an update to the City of Oak Creek Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Code. A resolution authorizing execution of a finance development agreement by and between the City of Oak Creek and Rawson Avenue Developer Inc. for TID related to TID 14. A resolution authorizing execution of a finance development agreement by and between the City of Oak Creek and iDrexel LLC related to TID 15, and a resolution for the Oakview Business Park CSM Development Agreement. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Item 5A, it is a public hearing for a comprehensive plan amendment. It is a public hearing for a proposed amendment to the 2020 vision, a comprehensive plan for the City of Oak Creek. It will update the plan use category in map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned business, single-family residential to mixed use for the properties at 8300, 8304, 8380 South 27th Street, and 8370 South Orchard Way. Carrie.
Read the official notice into record, notice of public hearing before the Oak Creek Plan Commission. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider an amendment to the 2020 vision, a comprehensive plan for the City of Oak Creek, as it relates to the properties at 8300, 8304, 8310, and 8380 South 27th Street, and 8370 South Orchard Way. The hearing date is Tuesday, February 27, 2018, at 6 p.m. the Oak Creek City Hall, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin 53154, in the Common Council Chambers. The proposal is a proposed amendment that would update the planned land use category in map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned business and single-family residential to mixed residential for the properties at 8300, 8304, 8310, and 8380 South 27th Street and 8370 South Orchard Way. The Plan Commission may schedule other public meeting items and hearings for February 27, 2018. This hearing may begin at 6 p.m. or as soon as possible following the conclusion of any other public meeting items and hearings. Any persons with questions regarding the proposed changes may call the Department of Community Development at 414-766-7027 during regular business hours. The date of the notice is January 18th, 2017. City of Oak Creek Plan Commission by Dan J. Bukevich, Mayor. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak on this matter should approach the podium. Clearly state your name and address and your reason for and your comments. Please address all comments to the Plan Commission. This hearing is now open.
Thank you, Carrie. Anybody want to give a narrative on the comprehensive plan and why we do it?
Sure. The proposal is to change the existing land use categories for the properties highlighted in red on the screen from planned business and single-family residential to mixed residential in consideration of a future multifamily residential development on the property. Concept plan is now shown on the screen. This will be discussed in further detail by the applicants. They have a presentation that'll commence right after my remarks. Parcels in the area are currently in the comprehensive plan as identified for planned business, single-family residential, mixed residential, and two-family or townhouse residential. Mixed residential would allow for the development of a variety of housing types consistent with the existing residences in the neighborhood. There is already a variety there. The state of Wisconsin's smart growth law requires that all local land use decisions after January 1st, 2010 must be consistent with the objectives, goals, and policies contained within the comprehensive plan. Approval of these changes to the comprehensive plan would bring the comprehensive plan in line with the intent and goals for future development of the properties stated. I will now turn it over to the applicants for a brief presentation. The suggested motion is for approval.
Thank you, Carrie. Good evening, everyone, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Ryan Schultz. I'm president and owner of HSI Properties, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you this evening. Tonight with me is Ashley Pohl of our office, a junior project manager, and Eric Harmon of AG Architecture. They'll be helping me as we go through our brief presentation tonight. Carrie did a nice job of summarizing the project, at least in its infancy state, where we sit this evening. And I would like to keep my comments brief, but what I would like to do is reacquaint yourselves with us as a developer and as a company. You're probably familiar, we are the developer and owner of Drexel Ridge, which is a project that's currently under construction just east on Drexel Avenue, of where we sit here this evening. But I wanted to walk through some of the other relative experience, particularly as it pertains to multifamily experience and how we operate as a developer. We are based in Brookfield, Wisconsin. We are an at-risk developer, which means all of our assets are proprietary. We're not a service developer. With a few exceptions, everything that we build, we own and manage. We specialize in mixed-use multifamily, but we also have developed commercial property, retail, industrial, and recently healthcare. We just completed construction on a outpatient surgery center for an orthopedic practice in the town of Delafield. I started the company in 2006, so about 12 years ago. We have developed and have assets of roughly $250 million under management. That's slightly understated. This project would certainly eclipse $300 million over the past 12 years. We're a local firm with pride of ownership. So I grew up in this community, or not this specific community, but in southeastern Wisconsin. All of our projects are local. We're not an out-of-state developer that's investing via helicopter. Everything we have and that we own and manage, we're very familiar with, and we feel that we have a good pulse on the marketplace as a result. Our firm is very well capitalized. Our investor group is closely held individuals that live and operate businesses within the community, most notably some here in Oak Creek. They share the passion that we have for building quality communities. Most of them appreciate being able to drive by and view and visit an asset that they've made an investment, and that's one of the pride of ownership attributes that we have as well as a developer. We're a long-term holder and investor in real estate. So our model, our goal is not to build something with the anticipated goal of flipping out of it. We build things with quality and care so that they have longevity and sustainability. We're a very active owner and operator. Our company's small. The people that are stakeholders are here. Myself, probably most notably. It's either myself or my partner, Tony DeRosa, who I know many of you are familiar with, that we're here at the in front of the Plan Commission. We're in the weekly job trailer meetings at the construction site. So we really like to get into the really nitty-gritty details, and that's how we think we can achieve success in a project. We're committed to quality and innovation. I spoke to sustainability earlier, and just the longevity and durability of products. We like to innovate. Every project that we have developed incorporates new technology, products, you name it, design styles. So we constantly want to be pushing the envelope on what we can deliver to the marketplace. A couple of projects that we'll just touch on relative to multifamily, the Enclave and Annex and Enclave in Wauwatosa, the Standard at East Library in Milwaukee, Well Street Station in Delafield, Wisconsin, State Street Station in the village of Wauwatosa, and of course, Drexel Ridge here in Oak Creek. All of our communities are amenity-based, service-oriented lifestyle communities. So the perception of renting has changed dramatically over the last 15 years. People don't rent because they're forced to, they choose to rent. And they choose to rent from communities, from us, because we provide a lifestyle, we provide a community. We take care of the things that makes their life easier in a busy world that we live in. And that's not just from the services, but also from the sense of community that they have when they live in one of our communities. So this, of course, is Drexel Ridge. The first phase is nearing completion, the first of the first 12 buildings, that is. Very proud of what we've built here. This building, this complex has been wildly successful, which is part of the reason why we want to replicate and continue doing business here in Oak Creek. But this project, we really pushed the envelope on design and materials. For those of you who are familiar with construction, I don't need to tell you that this building could have easily been built for significantly less by removing a lot of the architectural features and materials within the building. It's all hardy plank siding and hardy wallboard, steep roof pitches, architectural fascia and soffits at all the roof line, wide hardy board, frieze boards around all the windows and doors, ample masonry materials. Our decks are made of composite materials. So when we're putting money into buildings like this, 8 years down the road, we don't want it to look like a tired property. We put the money in now so that there's sustainability and that they look just as good now as they do 10 years ago. Or when they were originally built. Moving on, I'll show you a couple pictures here of the community space. If you haven't been to this property, please stop by during normal business hours. It's staffed full-time by our leasing and management professionals. We have a full-service restaurant and bar area in this clubhouse. There's a viewing area with a theater area, of course, billiards and a game table. We have what I think is a first-rate exercise facility that could certainly supplement a gym membership, as well as all of the professional offices for the building. So spared really no expense on the club room. People view this in the community as an extension of their unit. So these community spaces are, if not reserved, they're rented for private parties. And it's a great gathering space. And what it does is it gets people to interact with one another. So some of these rooms are used by different individuals at different times. And that's what really builds community, which helps with retaining tenants, perception of safety, and everything in between. These are some other shots, a couple of the interior finishes. They're certainly condo level finishes within the units, an upgraded appliance package, quartz countertops. The plumbing fixture package is very nice and well appointed. We do decorative light fixtures beyond just what you normally see in an apartment. Our swimming pool, this is probably the high point of the project. Newman Pools, which is the preeminent manufacturer, developer, and designer of swimming pools in Wisconsin. They did Noah's Ark and a lot of the pools in Wisconsin Dells. Built this pool. This is the gathering place during the summer months. Drive by at any time during the summer and you'll see this pool filled with all of our residents. It's a great amenity. This project, I'll move along through some of these pretty quickly. State Street Station is a project in Wauwatosa. It's 148 market rate apartments above 24,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The first phase of this project opened last June. It's 95% leased. The second phase opens in May, and we expect to be fully leased both on the apartments and on the retail upon completion. Is right in the village of Wauwatosa, which is kind of a unique community in its own. And again, it's a wonderful market rate project, spared no expense, and it's professionally managed, and I think it'll be a great addition to the village of Wauwatosa. These are just, again, some of the unit features, amenities, very similar and consistent with Drexel Ridge and what we anticipate here. The Enclave Luxury Apartments is just under 200 market rate apartments in Wauwatosa. It's a collection of 3 buildings. We built this project in 2011. It's been wildly successful. It was one of the first kind of, if you want to call it, trailblazer type market rate projects in Wauwatosa when the surge in multifamily really began. It's aged very well, even for being just under 10 years. We continue to put a bunch of money into maintaining this property, and I think it shows, and it's a great property. Some of our common area spaces, again, an outdoor swimming pool. We put ample, really nice monument signage on all of our communities, so there's kind of a sense of the front door, if you will. Again, unit amenities, exercise room, club rooms, things like that. The standard at East Library, this is a 99-unit market rate apartment project that was built on the east side of Milwaukee on North Avenue, about 2 blocks west of Whole Foods and Columbia St. Mary's Hospital. This project was a unique project in that the city of Milwaukee issued an RFP to developers to develop not only the apartment project, but also a new box for the Milwaukee Public Library, the East Branch. So we were able to dovetail those 2 uses together, and it's worked out very well, and it's an award-winning project. Some other shots of the building there. Wells Street Station is 58 units. It was built in the city of Delafield, near the downtown area. Market rate apartment project, all the same amenities, consistent throughout, professionally managed, great looking project, and is fully leased. One of the things that you'll find that's consistent on all of our properties is we seek properties that are in the path of progress, that have higher barriers of entry, and we think that we can create a unique opportunity on the property. So now getting to the subject property, you're all familiar with it. In aggregate, it's 20.56 acres. That includes the 3 smaller properties, the 2 commercial properties and the single family property. Our original intent was to develop everything behind it, but then we thought it would make sense to kind of clean up that corner as there's been a lot of turnover in properties, and I think really this area, the 27th Street corridor, is really reinventing itself. There's a lot of great things happening in this area, but we decided to combine those properties to kind of create one entire project. The comprehensive land use plan, as Carrie mentioned, is split up between planned business and planned mixed residential. So 40% of this land is already in the comp plan for what our intent is. It would just be to change the area that's up fronting 27th Street. The current zoning is a mix of uses from RS3, B2, B4, and of course RM1 PUD. So we'd want to clean all of that up to just have the PUD zoning for the project. The requested comprehensive plan calls for mixed residential. Our requested zoning would be RM1 PUD. That would be consistent with our Drexel Ridge project. The B4 zoning, not to go into it in great length, but has much different capabilities within it. It's a commercial district, would allow a building up to 50 feet in height and a fair amount of square footage, and it has all of the commercial uses. Not that they're negative, but it's certainly, we think that this type of project would be a more appropriate use given the adjacencies surrounding it. The future land use map designates the site as mixed-use residential. The general design guidelines for this corridor are to respect the natural topography. Buildings should be 2 stories or less in height, and buildings should be closer to the street. That's kind of a new urbanism design goal. And so we're going to try to pull those buildings up along 27th Street. Our goal is to, or the plan goal is to offer choices for quality housing, types, sizes, and styles that meet the diverse needs of the residents. And proposed development is consistent with our proposed development is consistent with those goals of that plan. So we recognize that this is a very early step in this project, but even before we come before you this evening, we've done a fair amount of market research. Obviously, we have a case study that we can point to a mile or two away. That project has been wildly successful, but we do our own internal research. We hire third-party professional market study and macroeconomic companies that look not only what is the demand for this housing today, but what is it going to look like 5 years from now? What will it look like 10 years from now based upon the job creation that's happening in the area, other macroeconomic things that are happening in and around this marketplace. The Drexel Ridge case study obviously speaks for itself. We think there's pent-up demand for modern luxury apartment-style homes in Oak Creek. People that are looking to sell their homes but stay within this community. Most of the market rate apartment stock is older with dated finishes and lack of amenities. The target demographic for this property is pretty similar to Drexel. It's folks looking for upscale suburban communities to call home, empty nesters, baby boomers, young professionals, and those choosing to rent, as I alluded to earlier. Area employers are playing a key role in this. There's been a lot going on in Oak Creek and surrounding Oak Creek with major employers coming into the marketplace and job transfers to Metro Milwaukee. Originally, Drexel Ridge was targeted towards folks in the community. We're finding that 60% of those people are coming from outside of the community, coming into Oak Creek and drawing their attention to this community. At Drexel Ridge, we have a great representation of everyone in that community. We have police officers, school teachers, we have folks in the trades, we have doctors, we have entrepreneurs. There's a little bit of everything, and our unit mix caters to that full spectrum of demand. The unique community of the development will cater to those not just looking for the typical 3 or 4 story building with common corridors. Believe us, we're a big believer in that style building. We've built plenty like that. There are 2 right here next to City Hall that have done very well, but we feel that there is still a need for this suburban style product with direct entries, the larger attached garage. From a perception and a value proposition, that's a key to leasing these apartments. And of course, the abundant amenity package, green space, and it's very conveniently located. The proposed development right now is 280 units. Our overall parking is 2.27 stalls per unit. That's pretty close to Drexel, if not right on top of it. Our density is 13.6 units per acre. That's just slightly higher than Drexel Ridge, but keep in mind Drexel Ridge had about 40% of that land was unusable as floodplain. So if you netted that out, actually Drexel would be slightly more dense. The proposed development, it's a multifamily community, 2-story townhouse style buildings with direct entrances, high-end multifamily apartment homes spread out over multiple 2-story buildings. It's all slab-on grade construction. There are no underground parking structures. Apartment amenities, we touched on a few, but attached garages, high-quality construction, oversized windows, quartz countertops, private balconies, open concept floor plans, in-unit washer and dryer systems, central heat and air conditioning. So we have separate independent furnaces and condensing units for every unit. We don't use the cheaper Magic Pack, which is a combined unit. It takes up space on the window wall. It's a louder unit within the apartment. It's not as fuel efficient, and you see the little metal grates on the side of the building. So we choose to stay away from that. Stainless steel appliance package, Energy Star rated appliances. The community amenities, state-of-the-art clubhouse and pool, first-class fitness center, significant open green space, walkability within the community, and of course, on-site professional management. So I'll just turn it over to Eric Harmon from AG to just walk through a little bit of the methodology on how we arrived at this plan, recognizing that this is the very first step and we'll have plenty of time to dig into the actual architecture of the buildings.
Thanks, Brian. And it's like Ryan said, it's great to be back in front of you guys to present another opportunity here in Oak Creek. Ryan did a great job of doing the detailed analysis of what the site is and what we think the development can be. But just to give an overall high-level view of
Name
what
and
this
address,
project is,
please.
will do. Eric Harmon, 1414 Underwood Ave, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. About a block away from State Street Station. So from a high level, when we looked at this site initially, we had kind of an understanding of 27th Street being a active corridor that's under a lot of redevelopment with a lot of positive things happening. So when we looked at the overall site plan, we looked for an opportunity to really put our best foot forward up on 27th Street. So with the clubhouse and the first building fronting up on 27th, we're really doing a great job of presenting this project to the community as a whole. So as you're coming down 27th, you're going to see a dynamic aspect of this site. We have the unique opportunity off of Forest Hill Ave, as it's labeled there, but I think it's actually Colonial Woods, to come in off of the existing cul-de-sac that exists there and make that initial impression of that clubhouse, similar to what you saw at Drexel Ridge, but it'll have its own architecture. That initial clubhouse and pool area will create that active amenity space, the advertisement for the property itself, and the community amenity that residents are going to use. Once you're in the site, you're going to see a lot of internal circulation. The circulation from the road creates balanced access to all of the individual buildings. These buildings have direct entry from the units and attached garages within the footprint of the building. So you see the connected roads to each property. You also see some standalone garages that are supplemental to the overall footprint of the building. In addition to the roadways, you're going to notice a lot of sidewalks on this property. The sidewalks are to create that availability of connection. With this not being a corridor building, the residents need to leave the building either whether it's for a car or to access the amenity or the green space. So we want to make sure we're providing ample sidewalks and connections so that people can have that public use and the ability to get outside, walk around, get over to the clubhouse. The overall internal connection comes in off of Colonial Woods Ave, but then has a secondary exit back onto 27th Street. This is not intended to be a primary entry, but simply a convenience interior and exterior exit point for the residents. And we're taking care of those two access points so we don't have to connect to the existing development to the north or south. So we can leave those neighborhoods alone and intact as they stand today. From a view standpoint, you'll notice that each of these units look into each other. So they're stacked up back to back to give the connection in between. But most importantly, the outskirt units that are facing the outer edges of the property are all looking outward. 27th Street is a great corridor, and that's kind of the advertising piece. But on the east side of the site, we've got a fantastic amenity in the public grounds over there. So we really focused a few of those buildings to look out onto that natural resource that'll remain a wooded area for a long extent of time. And lastly, Ryan touched on the parking. We're currently sitting at 2.27 stalls per unit, and that's key that we have ample parking for the residences and their guests. So what you're not going to see is an overflow of cars trying to park on the cul-de-sac or long distance to travel for the guest of the residents who they're visiting, but instead they have the convenience of direct access. All in all, you're going to see a lot of similarities to this plan that we had at Drexel Ridge, and I think we're building off of all the benefits that we've created there.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. And just to note, my address is 18500 West Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Brookfield, 53045. Of course, we're very early in the process right now. Should this move forward, we would hire a team of consultants, engineers to properly and make sure that this project is designed with integrity, very similar to Drexel Ridge. So in closing, why do we feel that this is a good project or it benefits the community? We think it provides an alternative modern housing option in a growing community. It meets market demand for new multifamily communities. There's a significant increase in tax base. This property is currently assessed at $694,000. This is an approximately $35 million investment. So this, combined with Drexel, will nearly eclipse $100 million of investment on our behalf in Oak Creek over the last 3 years. These are critical tax dollars that allow for the city to continue to provide the outstanding community service and amenities that exist here. There's abundant green space within the development. The project will appeal to a broad demographic. It's a development that represents the highest and best use for the property and the State Street or the 27th Street corridor plan. And we feel it's a catalytic project for the corridor. And lastly, it'd be working with an established developer with a track record in the community. So we hope that you can support this project tonight and put us on our way to take the next steps. I would ask that, should you wish to endorse the project, that you would make any approval condition to HSI Properties or its affiliate taking title to the property. There's a covenant within our purchase agreement with the seller that needs to be in place.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We do have at least one person wishing to speak. Seeing as it is an open public hearing, Mr. Arden Dagner. Come on up, Arden. And this is the first call.
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. This is a tremendous development, and my question is this part of the 27th Street plan that was envisioned with the city of Franklin? Does it extend down to south of Forest Hill?
It is South Forest Hill, Arden, and it does meet the 27th Street plan, if I'm not correct. Doug, you want to comment? Well, Doug's been around on the 27th Street plan.
It
just
is
a
part of the
bit longer.
27th Street corridor plan. It is not part of an overlay district.
It's not part of this.
It's part of the general, but it's not part of a separate overlay district. So it does have to conform to the 27th Street general corridor plan, but it does not have a specific set
Specific.
of
I
overlay
understand
district
that.
standards, so it's not in that kind of a district.
So this is an area which is shown as part of the plan. Remember, there were 4 different distinct zones. More of the regional retail in north along Rawson Avenue, north of Rawson. We had employment centers south along the South Branch Industrial Park and Ryan Road. And this is more of a mixed residential area, kind of recognizing that and the existing development pattern across the street in the city of Franklin. So it is part of the 27th Street plan, although, as Carrie mentioned, we don't have the specific overlay districts in place to regulate it in such a prescriptive manner as we do elsewhere in the corridor.
The other question I have is the fact that the original plan had amenities on each side of the road and banners and all kinds of bric-a-brac, you might say, to make it different. We've now moved to Drexel, of course, but my question is a sidewalk contemplated along this property all the way so that not only can individuals from the north and south traverse this on wheelchairs or sidewalk or walking?
I guess I'll just take part of it. The bric-a-brac you talk about that we all designed and laid out, actually it started going in last year. There are benches and a couple of signs up along 27th if you pay attention at Drexel and at Rawson that's going in. A sidewalk does run north from Drexel all the way down to Rawson. Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that sidewalk would continue.
Certainly is the plans for the expansion of the State 241 project continuing. There are no plans, although there are designs, there are no funding for it. It would include sidewalks along both sides of the street, although there's no project at this point in time that would incorporate that.
Actually, are they multi-use paths? Not just
Yes.
sidewalks. They're wider than average.
The
6 foot
The
wide?
multi-use path actually, on the Oak Creek side is 10 feet.
Oh, 10 feet.
So that we should concentrate on that particular portion that should be followed through to have a complete arterial with access not on the road but all through these various areas. If you know many people that use Drexel Avenue for exercise and and other items instead of being incarcerated in a, or I should be stuck in a enclosed area. Again, this 27th Street sidewalk extension is necessary in an urban area. The other request I have is visitor parking. I have been roundly tagged years ago for parking in an apartment complex where every spot was labeled. And because I parked there, my car was hauled away. Are visitor parking spots available for people such as I, or do I have to pay hundreds of dollars to retrieve my car? Thank you.
Thank you.
And maybe just to preface some of the discussion that's going to follow, this is the first step in the process. This is a discussion about the land use as with the comprehensive plan. Although there was some great background material as to design, and you saw a concept plan up there. I mean, keep in mind that we're discussing the land use and making a decision on the land use. And as the project unfolds, there'll need to be rezoning. There'll need to be there may be some changes need to be made to the street patterns. And certainly the site and architectural plans would come back before this body. So certainly valid for discussion about the overall feel of the project, but I wouldn't want to get too bogged down in the details of architecture and site plan at this point.
And that's a great point, Doug. To address Mr. Dagner concerns about sidewalks, yes, connectivity is huge within the city. As far as the parking spaces go, that'll be worked out as per code. And again, in most complexes, they do provide visitor parking. They have formulas to figure that deal out. But Doug is right. The presentation got pretty deep in the weeds of the buildings and the quality of what this developer brings to the city. But really the question before us is this appropriate use for the land? So that's really what we're looking at in the motion going forward. So with that, I will make a second call on the public notice. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach podium, name and address. Third call. Please approach podium, name and address. Seeing no further, we will close the public hearing and move on to item 6A, and that's consideration of what we just talked about in the public hearing. I will now open it up to questions or comments from the commission. Christina?
Okay. So I actually have one question. You mentioned through your presentation that you have done market analysis to prove that there is a need of this community for that. I'm just going to be curious to find out what kind of market analysis have you done?
We've used a number of companies that provide market studies like that to not just us but other developers, and it's not solely multifamily, but we've used a company in Brookfield called Meganberg Research. They do appraisals and market studies and macroeconomic studies. So what they do is they study what the demand is, and they cross-reference that against new product that's under construction and being planned. And they give us an idea of what the absorption needs to be to hit our leasing goals. And not only that metric, but also what is your saturation point. So how wide of a net do you need to cast? How wide of a net do you have to cast to reach that leasing goal? And what is your penetration rate? So if you have a sampling of 10 people that are, call it qualified residents, how many of those people do you need to bring into the complex to make it successful? So there's a number of metrics that they look at, and they're very trusted and well-respected advisors. So
And you have used that in the past when you built your other development?
on all of our projects, we do that one as a check of my own gut reaction, but we also have investors that place quite a bit of money along with us, and we like to give them peace of mind and an unbiased opinion.
Thank you.
Hey, Christina? Brian, anything? Dawn? Greg?
Just a comment, no question. I do feel that the changing it to mixed residential would be a more appropriate buffer to the condos and the single-family neighborhood that's right there, as opposed to it being planned business currently and having a big box retailer or something be able to go there.
Chris? Fred?
I just have a question for the developer. How are you doing in scheduling on your other project on Drexel? Have you meeting that time limit that you set?
That's a great question. And before I forget, the other company that we use is Tracy Cross and Associates. They're in Chicago. I was having a brain lapse. So yes, that's a great question. We're actually exceeding the schedule at Drexel Ridge. So Drexel Ridge was always contemplated as a two-phase project. It's 286 apartments. And we wanted to tiptoe into the market and see what the demand would be, and substantiate the recommendations of the market study group. So we did the first phase, which was 170 or so apartments. And the goal was to lease it up at a clip of 8 to 10 units per month. And if we were successful in doing that, we would start the second phase in spring of next year. The demand has been so overwhelming that we've actually decided to close and start construction on the second phase about 9 months early. So we think that the entire Drexel Ridge project will be complete by the end of this year, and fully leased up by spring of next year. That's about a year ahead of schedule. And as it relates to this particular project, as we move through the approval cycle, a perfect opportunity, or perfect timing for us would be to start construction in fall. That would allow us to get all of the major utility infrastructure in and pour the first, call it 2 or 3 pads, and we can frame during the winter.
You.
Nothing? Nothing? Okay, I guess I'll throw my 2 cents in. The Wisconsin State Smart Growth Law requires that our land use decisions after January 1st, 2010 be consistent with the objective and goals of our comprehensive plan. This development actually fits it. This residential development actually fits that comprehensive plan for that piece of land, and I think Greg said it best. You know, it could be a big box store in there, whatever it could be. So I do think it fits. Now, keep in mind, it's very conceptual of what they showed, like Doug said. Road configurations, things like that. Many things to consider. All we're doing here is redoing the comprehensive plan to allow that residential in. Now, not only does it fit the plan, it is also conducive to the city to do this for economic reasons. The potential to develop that into something residential is going to be far worth more than what we actually have there. And we probably have quite a few residents here to find out what's going on in their backyards, and you should be here for that. But at some point in time, it will be developed. Now, this is where it comes in with conditions and restrictions at planning, what we can set down as they got into the weeds of the development of what it's going to look like, how it's going to connect. I don't want to get too deep in it, but I'm sure we'd have to hear from fire and police about connectivity on Orchard Way going through. Because that being a dead-end road is pretty impractical from a city standpoint. That is a planned road, and we'd like to look at the fact if that can go through. But from my point of view, it is a good use to redo the comprehensive plan with it. So that's really what we're here for. I'm sure everybody has lots of questions as to what it could be or what it is. That's where planning comes in. They cited a lot of their examples, the Enclave, State Street Station, so on and so forth, including Drexel Ridge. We do know they're high-quality apartments. We went through quite a bit at Drexeltown Ridge debating the effects to the neighborhood, so to speak, of what this development would do. And again, it's very early on, but the caliber we've found down at Drexel Ridge has not diminished the neighborhood at all. So I wouldn't suspect the same at 27. I won't speculate about their market and what they're going to draw on saturation if we're putting in too many apartments. The markets are calling for that at this particular time. But again, what they look like is something the city can do through conditions and restrictions to make sure they're the highest quality out there. So we have to keep that in mind. But the question today is, does this fit our comprehensive plan? And should it be redone? So, any other questions from the commission before I call for a motion? No? Okay. Motion on 6A, please.
Clerk moves that the Plan Commission adopt Resolution 2018-04, amending the comprehensive plan and planned land use map to reflect the changes in land use from planned business and single-family residential to mixed residential for the properties at 8300, 8304, 8310, and 8380 South 27th Street and 8370 South Orchard Way, following review and adoption by the Common Council.
Guzekowski, a second.
Roll call.
And yes.
Johnston, aye.
Lorick, aye.
David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Thank you all. And again, as we move ahead, we will be looking for residential input as to what's going on there. So we encourage you to pay attention to, as we move this forward, any residents that may be in there. Because again, we want to work with the residents to be as least impactful to their quality of life as possible as we grow and develop the area. So, moving on, 6B, conditions and restrictions. They're looking for a conditional use permit submitted by Dr. Jacob Otters, Lakeshore Veterinary Specialist for an animal hospital on the property at 9472 South 27th. Carrie?
Commissioners will recall that this was recommended for approval at the February 13th meeting, so tonight is just to discuss the proposed conditions and restrictions that were in your packets. So this is a pretty standard condition and restriction draft. The one thing that I would like to draw your attention to is Section 3, Site and Use Restrictions, Maintenance and Operation Requirements. So A says that the facility would be permitted to operate 24/7. No outdoor kennels, runs, or other outdoor operations except for one, and this is up for discussion, designated outdoor pet relief area. Animals must be kept on leash when outside of the building unless the outdoor pet relief area is completely fenced. No outdoor storage of materials, equipment, or supplies will be allowed. No grooming, daycare, or training services shall occur on site. Pet boarding shall be limited to those patients receiving care at the facility. I should mention that this is based off of what their existing conditional use permit is and what has been submitted in their narrative. No on-site cremations will be allowed at the site. Solid waste collection and recycling, standard condition that it's a responsibility of the landowner, and removal of snow from off-street parking areas, again, standard for the responsibility of the landowner. Parking and access would be in accordance with the applicable sections of code, as are lighting. Setbacks, again, for that district, and we are in an overlay district. This does take that into consideration. The time of compliance is standard for a 12-month allowance for the establishment of the conditional use permit, and that gets triggered on issuance of a building permit for the project, and that's 12 months following approval from the council should this be recommended to move forward. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the proposed conditions and restrictions, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts those conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit for an animal hospital on the property at 9472 South 27th Street after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Was the applicant here? Would they like to get up and say a few words?
Hi, good evening. Jordan O'Connor. I am architect representing the development group on this project.
Address, please.
Jordan O'Connor, N173 W21010, Northwest Passage, Jackson, Wisconsin. I don't really have anything else to add except for I'd just like to clarify one item on the conditions, if I might. Item B, and in this designated pet relief area, how the vets typically will operate within this area, it will more than likely be completely fenced in. The animals will never be unattended. They will always be on a leash with an employee. But what they will have is more or less a separation, dividing this designated area into two parts, one for kind of an isolation animal area, and then one for just the other pets that might be a little more rambunctious. Just throw an example out there. So I'd like to clarify if that is something that would be acceptable under this condition. And
Okay to increase it to 2?
well, and still, like I said, that'd be great. But
I don't think we need to get into the specifics of whether one side is for a specific use or not. If it's 2 areas, then it allows you to have 2 areas.
that'd be great. I appreciate the clarification.
Everybody understanding that? Basically, they'll have, instead of just one fenced area, they'll put a fence in between. So one can be a relief station and one can be, in case a dog has to, I don't know, walk off an injury or something, whatever they do with them.
Yeah, more or less.
And those areas would be, those areas would come about at site plan approval, so the Plan Commission would get an opportunity to see where those areas would be.
Okay. Start off questions from commissions.
Yeah, I
Brad?
have one question. Do you have an access point off of 27th Street onto the property?
No.
Just off of Ryan that you get on?
Correct. As of right now, the access is through cross-access easement with the neighbor to the east, off of Ryan Road only.
No access onto 27th Street?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Chris?
Oh, this is in my district, and when it was brought forward at the last meeting, everything was looking pretty good, and I agree with the continuation of and the restrictions here.
Greg? Dawn? Brian? Okay. My 2 cents again, these are pretty much the exact same conditions we laid down on this veterinary clinic and just about all veterinary clinics. Oh, would you like to say something, Arden? Come on up, please. Up on the mic, please.
I was just wondering whether
Arden,
a sidewalk is also protected. on this.
Identify,
How's that?
name and address again.
Oh, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue, Arden Degner. My question is the sidewalk also going to be on the side of this property?
Well, again, we're not specifically on that because it'll be on the 27th Street plan with the state, but
that'll be
we're on
later?
conditions and restrictions. So, right now, we're just talking about the uses and what's allowed on the property. Okay, again, they're pretty much what we laid out in standard. We did have quite a few veterinarian clinics come in recently. I don't see a lot of deviation from it, so I don't have any problems with it. I thank you for throwing out there the use of the designated area. If that's the intent, and as Carrie said, we'll see it again. So, seeing no more questions, discussion, motion?
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as a part of the conditional use permit for an animal hospital to property at 9472 South 27th Street.
Hannah
seconds.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hannah's got it. Hannah on the second, and roll call.
Hannah, A.
Johnson, aye.
Lorick, aye.
David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Item 6C, plan review. Review site building and landscape and lighting plans submitted by iDrexel LLC ICAP Development for the Aldi's Food Mart on the properties located at 410 and 500 West Drexel Avenue. Carrie.
The proposal is for a new 23,621 square foot or thereabouts, single-story Aldi grocery store on the two properties. You'll recall that CSM was approved for these two properties in November and December of 2017. A comprehensive plan amendment was approved in January of this year, and it was rezoned to B4 at the last Common Council meeting. On your screen is the proposed site plan. All dimensional requirements for the site, building, and setbacks appear to be met by the proposal. Access is on Drexel, a single access at this point. There are two proposed accesses on 6th Street. The southern access would be a right-in, right-out, as would be the access on Drexel, and the northern access on 6th Street would be for a full access point at this point. Future access to the site is anticipated as it would be over the parcel to the east. At that point, we would talk about access as it relates to that particular parcel. Parking is provided on site. It is a two-phase development. As you'll see, the first phase would be for the Aldi grocery store, and then future development is designated on the west side of the property. Minimum parking requirements for grocery stores are calculated at 1 stall for every 150 gross square feet of customer sales and service area, plus 1 parking stall for every employee at peak shift. Per the information supplied by the applicant, 4 to 5 employees would be on site at that peak shift, so that equates to about 84 parking stalls that would be required, and 112 stalls are shown on the site plan. Setbacks for those parking stalls appear to be met. Proposed hours of operation for the store, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Actually, I think that's 7 days a week, but I'll leave that to the applicant to confirm. A little bit difficult to see, but these are the proposed landscape plans that were submitted, and they were reviewed by the city forester. Her comments were also provided to the applicant for their review. Common Council approval would be required for the proposed prairie plantings along the detention pond that's north of the proposed store. We do need height details for the installation and at maturity for all the proposed plantings. That was not included for everything. All mechanical units, transformers, utility boxes, those kinds of utilities must also be screened. There is one note that there is a transformer box that appears on one sheet and does not appear on the landscape plan, so that might be an error. That would be something that we'd have to have appear on the landscape plan. And unless there are any objections by the Plan Commission, final approval of the landscape plans would be directed to the Director of Community Development. On your screen right now are the proposed elevations for the building. This is a new concept prototype for the Aldi store, so it does not look like the existing store that's on 27th Street. Exterior building materials that are proposed in these renderings include fiber cement board in a cedar vintage wood color and pattern, smooth brick, aluminum composite and metal panels in 2 shades of silver, translucent insulating panel, and storefront. Per code, the use of fiber cement products requires a 3/4 majority approval. As we've seen in other applications that use these products, it's up to the Plan Commission to determine whether or not that fulfills all of these requirements. The use of the aluminum panels and the translucent panels, since they comprise less than 25% of the visible perimeter of the building, they are considered accent materials and therefore they comply with code. I will say that while staff is supportive of the overall design of the building, the east elevation does require attention and revision. There are additional details in your report that mention this. Per code, blank walls are to be broken up by incorporating physical features like windows, material changes, etc. Code also requires recesses and projections along the length of visible facades in excess of 100 feet. The east facade is over 200 feet in length. There was a previous meeting with the applicant which staff attended and did make these suggestions for incorporating some design elements on the east side of the elevation that were mentioned in the report. Staff reiterates that this is something that will need to be discussed and will need to have further design elements incorporated in order to fulfill requirements. Also would like to point out that while the Plan Commission does have the ultimate decision for these plans, there is a section of code that requires a 3/4 majority vote for any modification of the standard, and any modification of standard may only be granted if supplemental design elements or improvements are incorporated into the project which compensate for the modifications of the particular standard. So if there's going to be a modification to the building's design or materials, there would have to be some kind of supplemental design for the rest of the building or for the site itself that would make up for that change to the requirements. As stated before, electrical switchgear, utilities, transformers, all of those things must appear on all plans, and we need to have all of those things screened. The plans did not indicate whether or not there would be rooftop mechanical units, but again, those would have to be screened appropriately. The one dumpster location is in the loading dock, which is on the north side of the building. That entire loading dock is proposed to be screened with 6-foot-tall evergreens. There's about 7 of them that are staggered there. There were some comments that were received from different departments, including the requirement to install sidewalks along Drexel Avenue. The applicant has indicated that they would incorporate those into the plans. The south median opening that's shown on the plans on 6th Street would have to be closed, and the applicant has indicated that they understand that requirement. Those plans were also revised to show that it would be closed off. There were some suggestions regarding the plantings so that they don't impact porous pavers that are shown in the parking lot. Applicant has indicated that they would work with the city forester and other departments to make sure that does get addressed. As far as porous pavers are concerned, we do have a requirement that there be more added to those plans, and that those comments were provided to the applicant. And while there is a conversation that continues regarding some of these requirements, including the building elevation and the porous pavers, they are a requirement for TID assistance in those agreements. And then again, the reiteration of the prairie planting requirement for Common Council approval. And the applicant has indicated their understanding for that requirement. Comments from the water and sewer utilities: the standard, any unused laterals need to be abandoned at the main, and no large vegetation or fences can be placed over the public water or sewer mains. Staff has recommended that the applicants work closely with all of the departments to make sure that all of the requirements are fulfilled. With that, there is a suggested motion provided to the Plan Commission. There are some conditions of approval that are for your consideration, especially with regards to the east elevation and the porous pavers. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Carrie. At this time, is the applicant here? Would they like to say a few things?
Brian Adamson, ICAP Development, 833 East Michigan Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53202. I think Carrie did a great job explaining where we've been in this project and where we are tonight. We're very excited to finally be in front of you with the site and building plans that we have so far. Certainly one thing I want to point out is even though we do have a second phase here, we're excited to move that forward and plan to be back in front of you very, very shortly with an additional building. Somewhere in that 6,000 to 7,000 square feet range. Several of the things I think is a big benefit to our plan with respect to these parcels is I think it addresses several of the issues that these properties have had in the past that have prohibited development on them. One is just the land mass in general. Each one of these properties by themselves are relatively small, and they've been a little bit difficult to develop by themselves. We've had the honor of working with these two property owners through this process and believe we've really maximized the value of these two sites by bringing them both together. Another thing that I think this plan really addresses well is the environmental issues that are on this site. The metal spun building, which is the eastern half of this property, does have several heavy metals and other contaminants in the soil. We've designed this we've designed this development in a way that does two things. One, it uses most of the building actually as a cap for that environmental issue, and two, it provides the stormwater in an area where it's not affected by that, which we think is very important. Additionally, this is a concern that the city has had with these properties has been access. In our development, we worked very closely with city staff to address that by doing several things. One, not only consolidating 2 access points off of Drexel Avenue, but also closing a median and creating that a right in, right out. We understand that's a big issue with some of the traffic that's obviously accessing Drexel Town Square to the east on Main Street and then also 6th Street. So we think that was pretty important. Several of the access points too, we work with staff on 6th Street just to bring as much traffic as we can to that north side of the site to create as much of that relief that we can to that intersection that's lit. The way we've designed this is most truck access, all the truck access for the Aldi building and most of the truck access for the smaller shop building will access off of Drexel and exit onto that 6th Street and head north, which we think is very, very important. Additionally, there are, as we've talked about in previous meetings, wetlands and floodplain on this site. Both of those are being left alone and buffered on this plan. Which again is something that we worked very, very hard on to bring the buildings to where they are today so that they meet those requirements to keep those away. With respect to the motion, I'm going to introduce Tom, the Director of Real Estate at Aldi, in just a minute, but wanted to talk just briefly about the porous pavers. The way we've designed the porous pavers today is that it will infiltrate into that area and then go finally, into the stormwater pond to the north. Our concern and our comment with adding additional porous pavers is you want to avoid putting porous pavers in several areas. One, obviously where the grade is high, you want to put it in where the grade is low so that we're actually able to use them as infiltration. Two, you don't want to put and can't put them where utilities are. So we need to avoid that. And three, you want to avoid wherever truck traffic is so they don't get beat up. We're open to working with staff on finding solutions to that. Our only caution is that this site is very small. It's relatively tight in density from a parking area. There's not a lot of areas where there isn't high traffic. So our concern is more on just finding some more solutions. We're open to finding those with staff. I just wanted to caution the committee just a little bit on that, that we don't see a lot of opportunity for additional pavers. With that, I'm going to introduce Tom Howell, again, the Director of Real Estate at Aldi.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Howell at 9342 South 13th Street, Aldi Incorporated, just down the road. I want to thank everybody for all the hard work. We've been working on this project for a long time, whether it was ICAP or the City of Oak Creek. We've worked on a lot of projects over the years, whether it was adding a bakery on 27th Street over the previous years, or remodeling and et cetera. So I appreciate all the time and effort everybody's put in for me over the years. And in regards to this project, I do want to clarify that it would be our second proposed location for the City of Oak Creek. I know that Carrie had mentioned that, but that's been brought up several different times. We also have a location located in South Milwaukee, and we have plans to remodel that location in the near future as well. So I just want to make sure I cover those two items. And then also in regards to Carrie's comment about our operations, we are operating Monday through Sunday, and that's 9 to 8 p.m. So that Monday through Thursday comment, I'm not sure if it was just a typo or an error, but on the letter that we provided, it did state the correct timeframes I just checked. But as Brian mentioned, we worked diligently with a lot of different staff meetings and pre-development meetings with the engineering department, the planning department for this overall project. We felt like we spent a lot of upfront time to make sure we met and addressed several comments. And Carrie and Doug and Andrew as well worked with us very specifically to make sure we incorporated those. And in the month of December, our company allowed us to go ahead and work with a new building concept design. And so we scratched our entire building plan and concept from all of our original comments and presented the building that you have in front of you. This is a very unique building. It would be a first of its kind in southeastern Wisconsin. This building is unique in regards to the aspect of there's no other one like it in Aldi in this general market. And the way the feature of the building is designed, you can see it's got the angled roof approach on the short wall side, and that's actually an independent roof line. If you look at the west elevation, third one down, you can see that the storefront with the tower of the building sign there it's a completely separate portion of structural steel. So when you walk in the building, you look and you see all the way to the roof deck in that portion. It's not a raised parapet. It's actually a structure of the building that is completely raised at 27-foot tower element. So this is a very unique building. It's a lot more structural components and breaks and architectural features that are focused on the two primary walls that face the storefront. And when we scrapped our original building design to go ahead and bring this new prototype design to the committee here tonight, it put a lot of cost, time, and effort into our part, and we think we have a very complementary building to the overall architecture to Drexel Town Square and all the other new developments within this area. So the east elevation that we've discussed on this portion of the building, I would like to clarify that we have not received comments in regards to breaking that up. We did present this building as is, and we were trying to stress that the actual overall cost for us to bring this new building, a bigger building with even more architectural features, is a very high cost item for us as well. But we feel like it's a very big complement for future retailers, and it's also a good long-term retail approach because we've been in this market for a very long time. We've got our corporate headquarters here. We have a successful store here in Oak Creek, and we're looking to do our second location. So our concern with the east elevation is that we wanted to keep this building as test design as we could keep it without making any enhancements or changes. And that was why we decided to go with this building and present it in December with our pre-development meeting with staff, and to go ahead and change all of our designs. And in regards to the building on the east elevation, this would be currently something that would be completely blocked by the current tenant. So for Roth Heating and Air Conditioning and the Vapor Store, this entire portion of the building would not be visible to any residents. And the future development, if and when that would happen, is out of my control and other people's control. And the future building and lot design would definitely block a large percentage of this east elevation with any future development. So that's one portion where, from a building aesthetic, if we can work with staff on a landscaping portion, especially with the screening of other items that were brought up, for us to do landscaping or board-on-board fencing and screening to enhance this area, that is something that we are willing to work with to help complement this area. But from our standpoint and the amount of space that would be available and visible for us to enhance the other sides of the building, this is one item that we would like to discuss at further length. And I did bring panels of the Hardy Plank, the new Nichi-Ha cement panel board that I can pass around. It's a very high-quality product. I'm not sure if you've seen it, so I figured I'd pass it to you guys.
Okay. This time we'll open it up for comments, questions from the commission. Commissioner Chandler?
I have a couple questions for the applicant, as well as Carrie. So Carrie, on the east elevation, is this the only side with the blank wall feedback, or is it also the north elevation as well?
Staff is not concerned with the north elevation. Staff is concerned with the east elevation only.
And-
Maybe to clarify that a little bit, I'm sorry, Chauncey.
That's okay.
The way our code reads is we examine things and review things based on a basis of visible perimeter. And certainly, there's no question that the Drexel Avenue or the south elevation is visible perimeter, as is the west. But as we treat our buildings, and it's all buildings, when you're driving west on a public street, which is Drexel Avenue, and certainly that will be a visible part of the building. Maybe not now, but certainly as it redevelops, and we fully expect it to. So from the perspective, and let me first start by saying that we really do appreciate the use of the new prototype by Aldi's. I think it's great. And I think we can all agree that what they've done within the city of Oak Creek with their distribution center and with their other store, they've been a great part of the community. What we would like to see and what we have expressed in the past to the applicant is that we are looking to wrap around some of those features from the south elevation. We're not asking to put in a second entrance or to wrap that in glass. We're looking for some appreciation of the fact that, yes, it is a visible part of the building. We're not looking for it to be the entire east elevation. And, if you look at our code, we certainly could have requested that based on our definition of visible perimeter. We want to work with the applicant. We think they've been a great job in the past and have offered up a building which is very complementary in design towards the more modern architecture that you see across the street. We feel that there are minimally intrusive things that can be done with respect to material changes that wrap around, which will really give a much nicer street presence to the building. And I think they'll be happy that in the long run that they did incorporate those changes into that east elevation.
Okay, so for the applicant, can you give us a little more information? I know you went over the east side elevation, that your preference identified no changes because it would be too costly. However, it does look kind of bland on that side. I mean, and it's so large. I think that's part of the issue, is just a large part of the, or side of the building.
I would agree with your comment that it looks like a boring wall when you look at it from the perspective of what you would see when you're looking at just the building. But as a consumer, as a citizen of the city of Oak Creek, driving by this, if you can go to the site plan, I think it's slide 3. I'm not sure if it, on the landscape plan, I know the one plan actually shows the building of the Roth heating and air conditioning in proportion to where our building is located. As you can see on the east elevation of the building that's currently existing, I believe that the corridor between the two buildings, and our engineers here can verify this, I believe we're only 40 feet apart, roughly. And you can see that the Roth heating and air conditioning building is set back at the same exact distance that our building currently would be. And we've actually eased the view of this corridor. If you go back to the landscape plan, carry on slide 3, please. We've incorporated a very extensive landscape plan for this overall development, and worked diligently to provide something that's very complementary to the overall area. And it's we're very proud of the landscape plan and what we've worked on with staff, and we feel like we addressed that area of the building. So from a view standpoint, someone walking by aesthetically in their view corridor, we feel as if we have complemented and addressed this area of the building. And with the future development, and as I said, it's hard for us to put a concept together and spend extra costs on something that currently no one can answer in this room if and when it will ever happen. So we're trying to address a building that will not be visible. And I'm not sure when that will happen or if it will. So that's why we feel like we actually have addressed this issue with our design and put the extra time, money, and effort and costs into the landscape plan to address this area of the building. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Now I have another question for Carrie. In our packet, what page is this? Page 3, the final paragraph. You're saying that parcels to the east of this building are also included for this discussion? Is
No.
that including the Roth building?
No, what the paragraph 3 is stating is that the two parcels to the east are part of the proposed TID 15, which would be a redevelopment project in the future. So that's what that clarification is. It does mention that while these buildings, as Doug mentioned, exist now, they are slated for redevelopment at a future date.
Okay. And then my next question for the applicant, can you provide a little more information on the locations? There were questions about the transformer, utilities, trash, enclosures.
Absolutely. In regards to any of the utilities that are located on site, if we're able to screen them with mature landscaping, and if that's something that's acceptable to staff, we're more than willing to work with them on that. If we're required to do a board-on-board fence around the transformer or any other units on the property, those are minimal items that we are willing to work with on that weren't addressed with this submittal, but I think that that's a conditional item that we can work with staff to get those approved as an agreeable item. That's a minimal item for us to work with them on. In regards to trash, we will have one trash can located at the front facade area underneath our canopy. That is a characteristic of every Aldi site to have one at the entrance, and we also have one in the dumpster area on the north side of the building in the truck dock location. We have one, usually a 3.5 cubic yard dumpster in that area, and it is a recessed dock. So the dock actually goes down 3.5 feet And then there is a retaining wall, and as Carrie had mentioned, we are screening that entire area on the north elevation with an extensive amount of pine trees. And then behind the north side elevation, the creek and the overall tree growth, it would be very difficult to visually see this location. And then from access of customers coming in off of 6th Street, heading west towards our building, as I mentioned, from the elevation grade of our parking lot to that recessed portion of the dumpster location, the visibility would be very minimal amount. If they left the lid open on the actual unit, then they would probably see it, but we don't typically leave the lid open. So that's where the two locations would be at.
My apologies. I missed where they are. Where are all these items located? Is it where the
The
red
front
circle
tower
is?
elevation, if you,
So utilities,
Yeah.
the transformer, and the trash?
No, excuse me. I think what Mr. Howell is actually saying is that there is a small trash can at the entrance to the store. And then the dumpster location is actually in the recessed dock on the north side of the building. As far as the location of the utilities, the mechanicals, the transformers, and all those other things, those are probably still being programmed at this point. There was
We
one
don't know.
transformer that was identified on this plan that I have circled here in red. That didn't appear on the landscape plan, but I agree with Mr. Howell that that's something that we can work with the applicant on to make sure that all of those utilities, mechanicals, et cetera, are properly screened.
Okay, so screening, we have taken care of, but the actual locations, we are not sure where they will be located on the site.
Now-
Am I understanding correctly?
No, you're not understanding, I'm sorry. Let me try and make this a little bit clearer. The dumpster location is proposed on the north side. That's the only dumpster location in the recessed dock, so we know where that's going to be. And then as far as the smaller trash cans at the front of the store, that's not something that we're typically worried about. Those are usually things that we see at the entrances to stores, at the entrances to convenience store locations for grocery stores and or for gas stations. Those are not the things that we were concerned with screening. So as long as they're within the kind of vestibule area, the entrance location, that's fine. We know where the dumpster location is going to be. It's the mechanicals that we'll worry about, for screening.
and we know exactly what mechanics we'll have. So we'll have one transformer, and we're proposing to locate it on that east elevation, which Carrie has circled on the plan there to show. And in regards to that location, once we get a hold of the utility company, that could be located in a different proximity. We can never actually finalize that location. My engineer thinks that I push him too hard to make sure it stays where it's supposed to be, but it never works that way. So that's why it's something with staff, if we can agree to how to screen it, that final location, as long as it's screened, we're fine with. And then any other mechanical is actually all located on the rooftop of the building. And in regards to rooftop mechanicals, if you were to go to slide 4 with the elevations, you can see on the top elevation of the east elevation, if you look at the top left corner of the building, where you see that entire section of the building where I talked about the structure goes all the way up, our mechanicals will be located behind that structure. And from a visibility standpoint, our mechanicals should not be visible from the roadway. And we can provide line of sight drawings with those mechanicals. So we'd have our refrigeration mechanicals for our condensing unit, and we'd also have our HVAC. So for our rooftop unit, we would have 2 rooftop units at this time. So those would be the mechanicals that we'd have on top of our building that could be exposed. And that's something that we feel with the roof, the angle, we know that it won't be exposed. But once we get to actual construction drawings and we work all the balancing out with the mechanicals, we can provide those line of sights, and we have rooftop screening units that we can provide if they are visible, if that will become an issue.
And another question, when is the actual plans to start and complete the construction? Because I know in our packet, it says to start in 2017.
That's not possible.
That's why I just wanted to know the start and end. Is it
Yeah.
2018 to 2019
I
maybe?
think it's because we started so many meetings originally in 2017, but our project, our proposed plan, and for us to go through our due diligence, we're still in the early stages of the project, but we would like to commence this project in 2018. But I can't comment on the start date and the end date. I know that ICAP would like me to start tomorrow, but that's not how the real world works.
And then another question about what is this material?
That is, it's called a Nichiha cement fiber board.
So this would be all
The
of
brown
the
elements?
brown?
Correct. And
Okay,
so,
what's the white? Is it the same, just in white?
no, the white that you see, if you were looking just above the brown there on the front of the building, as Carrie had mentioned, it's actually a material, and it's called CalWall, and it's actually a fiberglass material, but it's translucent to where it looks like spandrel glass. But at night, it actually is illuminated with the interior lighting, and it actually lets in natural lighting. So it's actually an energy efficient complementary use in regards to energy code, and it appears very sharp. I have pictures of that that I can show you if you'd like to see it, but I don't have an actual sample because the building's so new. But I do have an actual picture of it. I can pull up if you'd like. The other building materials, the brick seems pretty straightforward. That you can kind of tell there. It's a spec brick that's 4 by 16, so it's a larger brick that complements the larger brick material that's used as veneers throughout the Drexel Town Square area. The rest of the building material and the breakdowns of the composites are listed on the elevation, but the actual tower element where our building sign is located is an Omega panel, which is an aluminum composite panel itself. I have a small sample of that. And when you go by our Oak Creek store on 27th Street, that tower element does have this same Omega panel, but it has two different colors. And now we only use the one color on the main tower feature. We don't have a secondary tower with this concept anymore.
Then Carrie, just another quick question. So for the different elevations, which materials are compliant? Or I should say, which elevations have the compliant percentage of material?
I'm going to say that all of them do if the Plan Commission approves the use of the Nichiat panel.
Thank you.
I actually have a couple of questions. So the first one is, from your landscaping, is there going to be any maintenance agreement to make sure that this perennials or any other landscape items are going to be taken care of on the long term?
In regards to the landscape plan, Aldi's is responsible for maintaining the site. In regards to requirements, we do maintain all of our sites. We're a Class A tenant. So that's something that we address. We hire professional companies to provide our landscaping year-round. And we don't do that ourselves, so we hire that out. But it is something that is an Aldi item for us to maintain. It's not the responsibility of ICAP or anybody else. So that's one benefit to this project, is it is a ground lease, so we are fully responsible for maintaining the entire site. And if staff would have comments or items from our submittal from our landscape plan or provide an inspection that we didn't replant something correctly, that's something that we do see from time to time. We always address any comments that come up. So
Okay,
that should address that question.
that's my only question. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Mic on? Okay. As you know, you're in the Drexel Town Square, at the entrance of the Drexel Town Square, on Drexel Avenue. I really believe that I would vote that you need to put something on that east, to break that wall up. Those other, the Roth is there, but that's going to be redeveloped. And that could be anything not covering, 2/3 of your building. So I would vote to see that broken up somehow, maybe at the front of it, and let the tree line hit the back of it, but that would be my vote.
And can I have a comment? Could we do more extensive landscaping for the area? Because by the time, let's just say, if Roth Heating and Air Conditioning goes through the process, or that property goes through a process down the road, we know that that could probably take a year, if not longer, to develop. And at that time, if we provided the correct plantings at maturity, 3 years, 5 years from now, we could provide plantings where that entire side of the building would not be visible. So that's just something that I would like to consider, because an item for me to work on with our internal approvals is to maintain the building in the condition that we are presenting here tonight. So that's why I stress that we can do a lot of different things with the landscaping to complement and to break up that feature, or to not have it be visible in the near future.
I'm afraid landscaping would not cut it. With the height of the building, to bring some of that light brown panel over to that area where the door is, and maybe extend those windows to kind of mimic that on the west elevation, that nice square. I I think that would be more attractive. You're going to get a lot of traffic. You are in a prime real estate place. So to make that as attractive as possible would be my vote.
Fred, anything?
No, I'm fine.
Chris?
Well, yeah, I guess it just comes back to, the two things right now, the 200-foot beast at the one wall that there's no break-in, and then the pavers. How do the pavers play into the TIF, if at all?
They're part of the stormwater, best water management practice. And again, we're dealing with wetlands back there. So we have to do that stormwater management deal. Brian, you got comments on that? You're kind of the stormwater expert guy here.
We definitely need to add some more pavers. Not so much for the stormwater aspect of it. This is more of the decorative aspect of it. And because we are not having the landscaping in the parking, that's the aesthetic portion of this. That's part of the TIF agreement. So we need to find some way to add some more in there. Just looking at, there's a couple areas that, could be viable. In parking areas, that
That's
north-south
what I'm looking
area.
at, that one area that had the red square around it. It was on one side,
That's
but not
that's
the
where
other.
that's where we have pavers already installed.
Okay.
And looking at the stormwater that we have here and the grading that we have, we like to keep that belt and suspenders in there. So we like the storm sewer catch basins to be there in case there is some failure in the future. There is a catch basin there that'll be able to take that drainage. So that parking area that is on the southeast corner, that would be an area that would be available for porous pavers, or that north-south corridor between the north-south roadway, the heavy-duty pavement, and the future development, that parking area through there. Either one of those could be options for porous pavers.
Just for an idea, how much square footage are we looking at? Oh, any idea? Or give me an area.
Yeah.
So I got a mental picture, please.
Math here on the spot.
Got to take off your shoes. Go
Yeah, I know.
ahead.
We got 40 stalls, so about half of the City Hall parking lot. It's less than half.
So the road they're showing isn't pavers.
No, that's heavy duty. I think it's heavy duty asphalt.
Heavy duty asphalt.
Yeah. The only section of pavers is what
Is-
Carrie has circled in the red square there.
I think the goal would be to find appropriate places in the parking areas themselves, the stalls themselves that could accommodate that. Not necessarily, although we have certainly done it in our Civic Center parking lot, not necessarily impose that on the travel areas, but the parking stalls themselves. And not all of them. There are conflicts. But I mean, there is an investment that's being made on the part of the people of this community in this development through the TIF district, through the environmental cleanup. It's important to the city that some of those sustainability measures be put on display. And I just don't think that the one bank of parking makes a whole lot of sense. So that I think it needs to be something that's more substantial.
I would agree with you. 100% that, it has to look uniform. So, I mean, if it is the parking stalls, it is the parking stalls going forward. We have it at Myers. We have it here. Zune's going to have it. It's everywhere. I think we have to be consistent on that one without a doubt. And again, if this is going to be a prototype, as we're saying to the public, and again, I believe your product speaks for itself. But if you really are looking to change the look, and this is going to be your showcase nationwide, we should make the showcase. And again, those are the things we're looking for. So I mean, I think we can work with staff to find the appropriate areas to probably get this done. And I know it's probably not pleasing to you now, but when it's done, you're gonna be like, wow, am I glad I did that. I do that a lot with my wife. I'm like, yeah, that shouldn't be done, and then I end up going, yeah, you were right. But anyways,
But usually that's
That's
when
another
you,
subject.
But that's when you haven't. That's when you don't know. We do
Yeah.
know. We do know what the pavers are like. We have another site where we've done a very large section of pavers where it's incorporated the stormwater management plan. And what we're proposing here is to do it for aesthetics, not for the plan. That's been addressed in the plan at this point. And we've proven that these pavers do not work well for the type of traffic that we have. And I think, Brian, in your experience with these pavers in the city of Oak Creek and in Myers, you do not have the semis driving through those primary areas. Now for us, the areas that you guys have highlighted would be the exact areas all of our semis would be traveling. And the pavers, aesthetic, or if they are part of the stormwater management plan, fail. 100%.
Where we're talking here on parking stalls, not travel lanes, parking stalls.
And I understand I can draw any diagram I want for a truck driver. They never follow.
Not going to make it.
And that's my biggest issue with pavers. So that's why, this discussion of aesthetics of adding a paver to break up the lot, if we can work with staff on this item, it's very clear to me where those areas would be the most impactful. And that's something we'd be willing to work with, but I would like this area to be discussed because if we're talking about future development, we're talking about a future possible connection to the Roth Heating and Air Conditioning area. Now, originally, when we were doing this development, our trucks were going to come in through that possible shared access roadway. And right now, our truck traffic is designed with the heavy-duty paving that you see in front of you that's hashed at a different 45-degree angle line. So our truck travel right now would be going through those general areas, and in the future, it could be cutting across through the front portion of our building. So I would just like to stress that when it comes to truck traffic, delivery traffic, it's very critical for us that we do not locate pavers because pavers are a maintenance item. Pavers are an item that, we are a long-term tenant. We look at it from that perspective, and we do like to take care of our sites. We like to reseal the paving. We like to mill the paving if it's in poor condition, provide a safe site. And pavers, you have to treat them differently. You have to make sure that you provide a snowplow company that treats them with appropriate chemicals, that shovels them. It's a lot of work to deal with pavers.
We have
And I
them
know
over on
that-
this side of Drexel.
Yeah,
City Hall, Zunia's gonna have them, Myers has them.
and we have them
We
on the
can't
site.
settle, I don't think. I think we need to
Well,
bring the bar, raise
Well,
the
well,
bar up a little bit and come up with
again, we got to look at the areas we're doing it. So,
Right.
I mean, we
Yeah,
don't
and that's
wanna-
what I ask
Right.
is the areas, because it's something that I'm willing to work with and help and work with city staff on, but I think if we can clarify that it's not the truck travel path areas, that's something to me that makes the most sense.
Let me propose this, because I said originally, yeah, we're doing it kind of for stormwater management, and then Brian corrected me. And that's really not it. It's kind of aesthetics. What about stamp dyed concrete? Okay, if it ain't a stormwater issue, what about stamp dyed concrete? You can stamp it to look like pavers. You get the same effect aesthetically, but it's concrete. So I don't know. I mean, does the stormwater still go into it? Because it ain't going to be porous. So correct me if I'm wrong, just throwing ideas out there. Brian's shaking his head, no, why not?
The stormwater doesn't go into it. So,
Well, yeah, I got that one. Yeah, I know concrete, but
yeah. I would not be in favor of a
of a stamp.
stamped colored concrete that's going to be in a parking lot.
Okay.
That's going to break down very quickly as well. And without maintenance on that, it's going to look worse than busted up asphalt.
I think having said that, I think there are ample opportunities to incorporate the use of pavers outside the truck travel areas.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just looking at the plan itself, if we just talk about the south property line, where you're going to have the most consumers foot traffic wise, visibly seeing the actual property, entering and leaving the property. I mean, those are areas where you'd have very little traffic, and I'm just looking at it saying, if a truck driver tries that out, he's going to be in a pickle. And that's where I was looking
he
at
has
perspective.
he has no business going southeast.
But that main parking between the two developments, that north-south portion there, where the highest percentage of our customers will park and utilize, that's also where most of the trucks will actually try to maneuver or do something differently than they should, and also on the long wall portion of the building itself. So those are just my only concerns I'd just like to bring up. If we do incorporate and work with staff, that we maybe had Plan Commission recommendation to work on those areas that are not the truck travel areas. That's the biggest concern that I have from a maintenance perspective.
Do you even have trucks come in from 6th Street?
That's reasonable.
Yes, we did the truck drive to where they could possibly come in through 6th Street, but we do want to make sure that we promote that they do come in off of Drexel, back in through the truck drive, or to the truck dock, and then drive out through 6th Street and go northbound to connect back to the interstate through Rawson. Correct. So that's what like I said.
Rawson's a good suggestion. I like Rawson.
Yeah, I think we worked with staff on that last year. So that's one thing that we had the flexibility of the trucks coming in off of 6th Street if they weren't sure how to enter the property because they're a new truck driver, like a Coca-Cola driver or a milk driver, not an Aldi driver, because we do have our own deliveries to the site. So that's one thing that we do take into consideration of what would they do. I know our engineer Mark, who's here tonight, he runs through those scenarios with me, but we never ever can figure out all the options that they drive.
Moving on, Greg, anything?
Well, since the pavers were kind of talked about, I'll have to echo as far as the east elevation, what staff and other commissioners are recommending. I do agree right now with the Roth building, it is blocked and it won't be seen much. However, along the same lines of concern for not putting pavers because future development could allow trucks into that side. And you being a long-term tenant there, we also have to look into the future. If lots are combined, it's only really going to be blocked if a new development goes in the existing footprint of that building. If they're combining lots, planning for a building elsewhere, it is going to be extremely visible. I'm looking 30 years down the road. I mean, I would hate to say, yeah, we missed this one during planning, and now for the next 30 years, you're just going to have to look at this big gray wall. So I would definitely have to push to add more elements on that side.
Stina, anything?
No.
Anyone else? Fred, change your mind? You got anything?
No, I'm just thinking about that east wall yet,
Yeah.
how we need to really break that up.
Obviously, east wall is a sticking point, and Greg kind of summed it up. That was going to be my point. I mean, the Roth buildings are there. In all reality, the property's probably going to become valuable enough that the owners decide to figure something out, or maybe not. But I would think more likely than not, they'd combine them properties into one. They won't stay on that same footprint, which would then probably shift that building to the east some. Like you said, you're 40 feet apart. You could go anywhere from 80 to 100 feet away. The big thing is we're going to look at it. As I was sitting here, I know you don't want to add cost and the whole deal, and you look at the east elevation, you know, the roof line actually slants into it, and what you're looking at is the top of the roof sloping down. I was thinking, boy, if there was somehow you could incorporate, it's costly, but something else, and maybe get a signage on east. But Pete just gave me the stink eye there. I don't think that's working. So
Even if you could get the slant, you know, a bit
but
of a pitch
again,
roof.
it's a pitched roof, and that's part of the aesthetics on the south and the other one. Now, if this was a north wall, I don't think it would be in heavy discussion because actually the north end looks better with the slope roof line. But I do think we have to do something now. You know, you mentioned, can we work with the landscape rather than us guys try to figure it out here? That would be a discussion for our planning staff with Carrie and Doug and Pete and so on and so forth. If they find it acceptable, I would put my trust in our planning staff to work out the details of that. Doug, you look like you're thinking pretty hard there, like you want to say something.
Plate. Haven't eaten yet. No, I think certainly we're comfortable dealing with the landscape issues, and I have full confidence that we'll be able to work with those out fine. And Ollie's done a great job. If any of you have seen their campus on 13th Street, it's gorgeous. And so from that standpoint, I have no concerns at all. I think though, if there is going to be some modification to the architecture, I think we'd like to have that come back to the Plan Commission.
Yes, I think we would like to see it when it's all said and done, but I guess my point going forward is I think we can somewhere on, the two big hangups are the pavers and the east wall. I think somewhere along the line between staff, we can figure this out. But again, you know, it's going to be there for a long time. And again, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what Roth is going to be. You know, it could turn into an all-glass building that you see right through. I have no idea. But again, it is going to be your prototype. It's going to be a national showcase. We want it to look like a national showcase from all sides, particularly when you're coming from the east. Because when you're coming from the east, all I see is a gray wall. I don't see an Aldi sign. Again, he's looking at me again. But I'd be happier with, if the whole roof sloped back to the north. But not redesigning your building. It's too late in the game for that. It's not my purpose, but definitely. And again, if you guys find a few $1,000s and you want to do that Nietzsche panel on there, that would probably really work too on the corner. I think it's the corner we're worried about because most likely whatever comes, be the same setbacks one way or the other.
Even if you can throw some of that gray board in on to break it up a little bit. You know, this you've got the two different colors here. Throw some of the gray and white trim up there.
Architectural standpoint, where you can see where we're looking east. It'd be the west elevations where the Nietzsche panel sticks up on the west side, and you see the bump outs there.
Yep.
You have windows kind of across the top. What if you put in a belt line of windows under there? Again, I don't mean to redesign and run up your costs, but just where them.
That's a question I could have. I mean, at this point, we're talking about whether or not this would have to come back to Plan Commission, correct?
Well, I think we can make it contingent on staff. Am I correct with this?
Well, I think,
If we okay the conditions and restriction contingent on staff?
well, I mean, we had hoped, honestly, that a proposal might have come forth that we could have acted upon with respect to the east elevation. And for many reasons, that didn't happen. If there was some consensus on what that might be, staff would be more comfortable in making that call. But absent any consensus on that, I think we'd prefer to come back to the Plan Commission.
Okay. Guys comfortable with that?
I mean, I know and I fully understand what you're dealing with respect to prototype and architecture. Looking at this as the long-term holder of that real estate and knowing what the concerns of the Plan Commission are, what would you suggest might be done to that?
I guess it's a timing aspect. Because right now, we're in a position of timing, and timing is critical for all items with this project of whether we continue to move forward or things are reevaluated from a project standpoint. So for us to go back to public meeting could have a very detrimental impact to the actual project itself. So tonight, we would like to have recommendation for approval to work with staff. And if I were to offer the option of working with staff with the pavers, the screening items, I think those are all items that are very easily identifiable to work with staff, especially if we identify the areas for the pavers to be non-truck traffic locations. And I think we've
I have no
discussed
issue
that
at all
in
working with you
regards
on
to the-
pavers and landscaping.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to address all the questions at one time. The east elevation, I agree with you. It's a long stretch of brick. If there was nothing there to block it. If we could get staff recommendation, just work with staff recommendation for approval, and we mimicked the two bump out features from the west elevation to the east elevation with the Nietzsche panels without the actual spandrel glass. The reason why I say not the spandrel glass is because this is the lower side of the building. You can see we've got the scuppers for when the water were to be failing on the east elevation. So for us to incorporate the spandrel, it's difficult with that raised parapet, but if we were to complement and bring those architectural features as the mayor presented, as you can see the projections on the east elevation where those projections are coming up out of the building. That is something that I can take back to committee for final review and approval. If we can get recommendation from Plan Commission tonight to work with staff to incorporate those features and make sure they're complementary and meet those requirements to break it up with the Nichihau panel bump outs with the slight enhancements. And I think that's something that I can work with committee on and turn around from a timing aspect to work with ICAP and keep things moving forward and not risk the project.
I think I can safely say that would suffice. So just to be clear, just very quickly, Chauncey, if you look at the west elevation, kind of cover up the tower aspect, it's pretty much what the east side's going to look like then. They're going to carry them brown panels that he passed over. Clear?
Yes.
Yep.
Now, proportionately, in regards to utilities, and my architects don't like it when I make decisions and try to do things, but if we have to shift things a little bit to make it proportionate,
Yeah.
that's something that I think we'll have to work with staff on and the professionals, because I am not an architect. And so that's something I think we can work with them on.
We'll take that deal. All right.
Okay.
Are we clear on the motion then? It's to continue to work with staff on the pavers in non-traffic areas. And then on the east wall, they'll incorporate the Nichi panels to mimic the west side. Is that wording correct?
So
Or,
I would,
Carrie,
I would
wordsmith that?
propose for consideration that condition 2 would be revised to read that the east elevation is revised to incorporate the Nichihau panel design elements similar to those on the west elevation. And those plans would be part of the plans and item 6 that would be submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to submission of building permit applications. I can help at the time of motion.
Thank you. And then the pavers. Again, if I said that correctly, it's continue to work with staff in non-truck traffic areas.
Well, condition number 5 just says that the plans are revised to incorporate additional porous pavers in the parking lot. Unless you want specific language regarding working with staff in non-truck travel aisles, I would maintain that condition 5 on its own is satisfactory.
Take your word for it. You're the expert. Okay. I think we're good. Any questions, comments before we go? All right. Motion.
Clerk will move that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans for grocery store submitted by I. Drexel LLC, ICAP Development LLC, for the properties at 410 and 500 West Drexel Avenue with the following conditions. Number 1, that all relevant code requirements are in effect. Number 2, that the east elevation is revised to incorporate Nichi panels similar to the west elevation.
That the east elevation is revised to incorporate Nichihau panel design elements similar to those on the west elevation.
Number 3, that the plans are revised to include locations for all mechanicals, transformers, and utilities. Number 4, that all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground, building, and rooftop are screened from view. Number 5, that the plans are revised to incorporate additional porous pavers in the parking lots. And number 6, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Guzekowski, a second.
Roll call.
Hannah, I.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate all your cooperation and help. Item 6D, consideration of a temporary use permit submitted by Larry Schultz, Westview Gardens, for a seasonal garden center on the property at 7501 West Howell Avenue. Pete?
My turn. As you said, Westview Gardens is requesting a temporary use permit that would allow them to operate a temporary garden center at the parking lot of Classic Lanes at 7501 South Howell Avenue. Similar to past years, the garden center will be located on the south side of the parking lot as illustrated on your screen in front of you. You'll be having a 16-foot by 48-foot hoop house with the purpose of selling plants, flowers, and produce. The business will operate 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. from May 1st till July 10th of this year. Staff is recommending that the temporary use expire on January 10th to allow for the applicant time to break down the hoop houses. Usually he ends right around 4th of July, but we give him an extra week to take care of the site and return it back to its original condition. This is the 8th year that this temporary use has been requested for this location. There hasn't been any complaints regarding the operation of this. Staff does always recommend that no signage be allowed to be painted or affixed to the exterior of the hoop house, and that they be limited to one 32-square-foot sign. Included in the suggested motion is that the Plan Commission approve the temporary use permit for the temporary garden center at 7501 South Howell Avenue with conditions 1 through 3. And I just want to note that condition 1 should actually be read that the temporary use shall expire on July 10th, 2018, and not include the text Classic Lanes OC LLC. That was a typo. With that said, turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Pete. Any questions for the applicant? We've run over this 8 times before.
I have one.
Yes. Could the applicant come up, Mr. Schultz, please?
Now that I'm becoming an expert in produce, because that's what I was just going to ask you. You don't sell produce. Okay.
Name and address, please.
Larry Schutz, 1247 51st Street, Caledonia, Wisconsin.
Only,
It's,
yeah.
It's strictly bedding plants.
Okay. Because it was mentioned, and I'm like, oh, that's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
But, okay, thank you.
Okay. Told you we'd get you up here quick.
Thank you.
Did our best. Any questions for Larry while he's up here?
No.
No?
No.
No,
Before.
it's been good. It's great little addition to the city temporarily. So, seeing none, motion.
Seifert moves that the planning commission approves the temporary use permit for the temporary garden center at 7501 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. 1, Classic Lanes OCLLC.
Oh, no.
Eliminate that portion.
the first
I'm sorry.
Started out with that, the temporary use shall be expire on July 10th. Eliminate Oak Creek LLC. That was a typo in
Eliminate
my
that.
report.
Just for, okay. All right, we just cross it out. I'm sorry.
That was my fault, sorry about
Item
that.
1, that the temporary use shall expire on July 10th, 2018. 2, allow one sign no larger than 32 square feet. And 3, that the property is returned to its original condition.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, I.
Dunstan, aye.
Lorick, aye. Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay. Item E, review site and building plan submitted by Leroy Stewart, Sunset Options Funeral Home for exterior building modifications to the property at 904 East Rawson.
All right, I just want to slow down this meeting. We're getting a little fast here, so. I didn't have my packet up
Oh, sorry.
as I thought I had, as I thought I did have, so I must just bring it up here and then I'll be ready to continue on. Okay, all right, thank you for your patience. As the mayor said, the applicant Sunset Options Funeral Home is proposing to modify the exterior of the existing building located at 904 East Rawson Avenue. The modifications include the addition of a portico, as you see on the front of, up on your screen right now, along with a new roof, change of materials to the exterior of the building. Before I go to explain exactly what the exterior is going to look like, here is an example of what it currently looks like now. It consists of vinyl siding and wood fiber board that's painted to look two-toned on the side of the building. What the applicant is looking to do is to install masonry panels along with 5-inch fiber cement board siding. Doesn't have the neat name of Nichiha, but it is cement fiber board or hardy plank. These materials will be installed on the south and east elevations. Here is an example of what it will look like. At this point, there is no stone that's on the bottom half would be the stone panels with this light. My cursor doesn't match my display. With the stone panels going up to the roof line by the sconces on the side of the building. On the east elevation, there'll be more of the fiber cement board with the stone panels on the bottom. As for the west elevation, they are intending to have all cement fiber board. They are intending to add more landscaping to break up that west wall. It's not 100 feet deep like the east wall that we talked about earlier tonight, but yet it will be considered all of the fiber cement board. Now, keep in mind that we do have our visible perimeter that we discussed at great length on the earlier agenda item, and that it requires a 75% of acceptable exterior glass brick or decorative masonry material. Fiber cement board or culture stone requires a 3/4 approval from the Plan Commission to go forward. And the applicant, when calculating out what the materials are, it's about a 60-40 split, with 60% the fiber cement board, 40% of the stone panels. So again, we'll need a 3/4 approval from the Plan Commission. Included in your report is if you were to meet the 75% standard, this is what it would look like. A little different than the other picture where you have that even belt line on both the south and east elevations. As I mentioned earlier in my report, they are proposing to construct a 5-foot by 10-foot portico over the front entrance of the building on the south elevation. They'll be using 2 columns to support the front end of the portico, which will be either clad in cedar or pine. This addition does meet the minimum setbacks for any addition to the front setback. And with that, there are no other site or landscape or lighting changes proposed at this time. With the having said that, staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the building plans for exterior building modifications to the existing building located at 904 East Rawson Avenue.
Thank you, Pete. This time we'll open it up. Questions, comments from the commission? Chelsea?
Yeah, I have a question. So, Pete, to meet the 75% requirement, would the brick have to be on both sides or just this one side?
What they have on the screen here is what to meet that 75%, they would have to raise that belt line over on the east end, and then they would also have to add some on the west elevation, which at this point they're proposing none. What they are proposing shows 60% of the stone material, but they would need to hit the 75%, so they're asking for special dispensation from the commission for aesthetic purposes. And the applicant is here tonight to further explain why they are going that route, but it's for aesthetic
Guys
purposes.
like to come on up? You've been waiting for a long time. Get your say so. Welcome. Name and address, please.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. My name's Leroy Stewart, 922 Crabtree Lane in Racine. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I've been part of the community now for the last, 5 years now with my funeral home. I'm a small business owner, me, myself, and I. And what we sat through here tonight, visitations go longer, so I'm used to it. So no worries on that.
I hope we're a little...
Well, you're a little more vibrant than a little more vibrant than other situations we have we go with. So, as you folks see on our renderings we gave you, if you know the building, it's not a commercial sized building. The walls, the front elevation is not even 8 foot high. It's like 7'6". The gable ends are typical. I mean, it looks like a ranch home. Okay, but it's zone commercial, so we're in a commercial state. We're asking for your variance on the 75% to make it aesthetically pleasing on the front elevation, which is the south, and also on the east. The west elevation right now with the setback, we have a large KEI building that blocks us off from the west. You can't even see our west elevation until you're directly upon us, and we're already past the building when we get to that portion. Also, we have a 75-year-old oak tree on our west property line as well that blocks that west elevation as well. So to break up the west elevation, as you see, we're proposing some landscaping just to kind of break up that large gable end of hardy plank siding and just kind of give it a little dimension than just having one large wall. And in the front elevation, again, as I said in the south, the 2 columns that will be proposed that help bring that 65% stone elevation up, and it'll also include, as you can see, new lighting on the front to accent the front entrance. That way, when people fly past us on Rawson at 50, they can see our building. Because a lot of people, they said, "Oh, hey, you're that tattoo place, right? Or you're the limo place." I said, "Yeah, that's what we were, but this here is we need to get that taken care of so we get rid of that stigma and be known as the community provider for funeral services in Oak Creek.
I'll say other ones. Fred, any questions? Chris?
This is just some really nice improvements, so.
Okay.
There.
I'm very familiar with this building. My father ran a business out of there for 10 years. It's a tiny building, so that, I mean, this is going to be fantastic.
Thank you.
Addition to that building. And you hold services in there.
No, we don't. Our concept is we're kind of going away from the traditional funeral home because just the way life is now, we don't hold services there currently. We use other people's churches and situations, and we also have a working relationship with the community center, where they allow us to use a third of their ballroom for families who do not have a church affiliation, and we save families money that way. So our niche is kind of like the affordable funeral, comparable to the Taj Mahals in the area, so to speak, that you're paying something you're not really using. And our mantra is you're going to get what you pay for, which is just our services. Now, there is a second phase coming, which is in a 2 or 3 year time frame that we will be back in front of you folks, because we'll be adding on to this building to the backside, adding a small chapel space so we can elevate our services to the community. But that's 2, 3 years down the line, and I don't want to discuss that now, but that's the long-term goal.
Brian?
I just have a question on the stone material that's being used on there. Since you drug your samples out, can we
Oh, sure. This
See-
is our contractor. He has samples of it to show you what the stone panel would look like.
Yeah, go ahead. Well,
Sure, I'll introduce myself.
Please.
Jason Heisinger, S228 W6956 Enterprise Drive in Big Bend, Wisconsin, representing Bulldog Builders. We've been working with Leroy, and I'm not going to kick a dead horse by putting the normal required amount on that building. It wouldn't look right. It wouldn't be aesthetically pleasing by any means. I did bring a sample. It's a smaller sample. Obviously, it comes in a lot bigger pieces and everything. But it is a Veretta stone. It's a very high quality product, backed by a 50-year warranty with the manufacturer as well too. And we put a workmanship warranty on it. I guess I can open up to any questions you may have for me in terms of materials used. But I think everybody pretty well knows this is a dramatic improvement to the building, and it will be a real, I guess, benefit to it when you're, like he said, going 50 down Rawson and you see something, in that area.
So it's just that material, it's in a panel?
It does come in panel form.
How's that attached to the building?
It's essentially, if I bring this over to you, you can see it's actually attached on there.
Is it about 3 inch? All finished?
Yep.
Christina?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I have to agree. It's an approval as to what Pete showed us. As far as it goes, even, man, we just really went over that whole east wall in the last one. I hate to say this, but your east wall, if you went halfway with the brick belt, I'm okay with it rather than putting up half a wall.
Yeah,
of
as you can
brick.
see, the aesthetics and the proportion do not match up.
I would rather just see one solid brick belt. I'd be happier if you took whatever you were using on the top and threw it to the west side, even though nobody will see it. I'd rather see a continuous brick belt around there than halfway up to the window.
Okay.
That's.
You're talking to the east side, right, Mayor?
I'm talking on the east side.
Okay, because I was like, the west side, we can
Yeah,
do it, but I have a large KEI building that's.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. I'm just, in the renditions where, you guys are trying to meet it, it almost looks like you just decided not to finish the wall on the west side. Also, I would keep the brick belt. That's my opinion. I know the percentage ain't there and everything,
Okay.
get what you're
I'm,
working with.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna just be clear. Are you looking to have the belt wall
did I
on all
say
three
west?
sides? Or are you just looking for the
No,
east and?
you know what? I'd love to see it on all
Oh,
three sides.
I would too, but no one's gonna see it, and I'd rather put the money
I
towards
get
something
it,
else.
But, you're gonna blow the same material probably on the east side as you would.
Right, right.
So I'm sure he'd cut the cost.
Well, yeah, that's another discussion for another
That's
day.
your negotiation. That's your negotiation.
So,
but anyways, I guess my point is on the east side, I'd rather see just a standard brick belt like picture that we're being shown.
okay.
Versus
And
it
that's
going
what
up
we would, that's what we
to
would
the
like
side
to
of the
have
road.
as well, just
So
for aesthetics.
I don't know how the rest of the commission feels.
I agree. I think it looks good if it's east. and
Uniform.
front. Uniform.
And the renderings just shows color, just to show, differentiate, the colors are still gonna be, chosen and stuff, so we might go lighter, we might go darker, but the stone is gonna be of a stone face like Jason showed you here, so.
Okay. That's all I have. Otherwise, I'm okay. So, somebody'd like to make the motion, and then you guys, consensus-wise, can decide on that east wall. If it should go up, or if it should be a continuous brick belt of, what is that, about 36 inches?
I think it's gonna be about
Somewhere
42 to,
42?
yeah, it's gonna be about 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
No, I'm fine with that. Whatever the brick belt is.
Well, what do you guys want to do? A brick belt all the way around, all three sides?
I don't care about the west. I'd cut them the break on the west, like I say, with the bushes. But
I thought you just said you want to see it there.
I'd prefer it, but I ain't gonna hold them stiff to it because I know that west side of the building. But again, the material's probably equal.
Well, this may end up being their main entrance when they go to expand in
West
3
side?
years.
yeah, I mean, I have another plan for it, but like I said, 2-3 years on, I can show you that plan, but right now, I whether,
Between the building and and again, if they put the landscape in, but if we get it on three sides, I'd like it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see all three sides, but the cost is.
Yeah.
What we have to look at.
I understand wanting the three sides, but I'm gonna reiterate that the west side coming down east off of Rawson, you have the building, you also have that large retention pond that's built up that you don't even see the belt line until you're past my building because of just the positioning of the setback from the west property line and a setback from the road property line. So putting a brick line would there would be great if you're walking around the building, but what the diagram says in the, your recommendations from the roadway, well, you can't see from the roadway until you pass my building.
You have input?
Just to address Commissioner Guzikowski's comment of, what to do if you want to have that condition of that west elevation to continue the stone belt line, that you just would make the recommendation with the condition that the stone belt line can continue on the west elevation. And I just bring to the applicant's attention, you need the 75%. This would be, we always talk about how you do added modifications to other spots on the site in order to compensate for lack of meeting the standard elsewhere. This could be one of those compromises that, all right, I don't meet the 75%, but if I add that stone belt line, yeah, it's not adding necessarily 100% to the visible perimeter as required, but it's going above and beyond that 75 of what's required of the south and east elevation. So if I'm explaining myself correctly, it's a compromise that you don't have to hit the 75% mark, but if you add that belt line on the west end, do we have a deal?
I understand that. It's just, I'm a small business guy, so I gotta watch my costs. That's the thing. I understand where Peter's coming from, and I also stand from your folks' standpoint, but I'd rather stick that money somewhere else in the building and then a site that's not gonna be seen. Like either put it in a parking lot that needs to be repaired or some other landscaping to enhance the property line. I mean, you folks know what the property's like. It's been suppressed for 20 plus years, and I'm trying to update it and put the money where it's most feasible.
Yeah.
But I will comply to what you folks say, but that's
Right.
my
Well,
small,
I guess currently, on the east side, what's proposed is a stone wall that's 42, probably another 3 feet on top of that. Is it fair to say that's 60, it's got to be at least 60 inches
to meet the 75%.
that you're trying to meet on the east side?
Right, it's gonna be pretty much at the gutter line, so it's like 6'8".
Okay, 6'8", so
You break it in
4.5.
half, that's,
I guess my point is, if you bring it down to the 42 inch, whatever you were gonna put on top of that
Mhm.
on the west side.
okay.
You know, I mean, it's not like you're buying a heck of a lot more material.
When you cut out the window and the door towards the back and you're only taking off a portion of that top, I understand you're trying to sort of move the material around. But when you take that into account too, that takes a chunk out of the end.
Well, what's the window, 24 inch?
I believe it's actually 32, but I could be wrong.
To another 8 inches.
And then the door frame, so you're talking another 5 feet almost. And it's not the labor
brick
cost
line
on the
doesn't go
material.
through the door, the stone don't go through the door.
No.
So I mean, all you're losing is the window space at 32 inches.
But you're adding on the other side with no door. It's all over.
Right, I'm not saying there is an added cost. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a tit for tat on this one, but again, for the little bit, I really think aesthetically, you're gonna keep this, basically, you're gonna keep the same percentage, if not increase it. It's gonna be better.
If everything can go through this evening and with the recommendations that Peter said about making the west side and east side, all 3 elevations the same at the 42-inch height, if that makes a goal for this, then I would have to agree with that. It would be in my best interest not to prolong this any longer, to worry about 20 feet.
And I don't even know if you'd need the landscape,
I would still do the landscape on that side just to
just to do it.
just to do it to make it look nice, because I want the building to be appeasing when people park on that side. Either, I have random parking there. People park wherever they want.
Okay.
So it'd probably be an added thing later on. The landscaping would be later on, but for now, just to get the building upgraded is what I'd like to do.
Okay, cool. All right, brick line on three sides.
42 inches.
Well, whatever he's doing it.
Yeah, the panels, I think they're coming.
Yeah,
It's
not worried about it. We just know the brick line's gotta be.
brick line.
Brick line.
3 sides.
3 sides.
Sides, but varying on the height.
Oh, it's going to be all the same height.
Well, I mean, it's going to be the same, but what is the original height we're going to end up with?
They're not really sure it's going to be whatever this brick line is in front, so.
We're talking
32.
possibly.
It's a 42, it'll be right in that line. It'll be
42?
at least a third of the.
Third of, yeah, right up,
Basically,
right.
the front of every face on the front, actually, I should say. It won't go as high. Sorry. It will go roughly, I would say 36 to 42, across the whole south, east, and west.
As part of the motion, there's no need to get into inches. It would be
right.
basically the motion, would be the
Brick,
planning
though.
commission approve the building plans for the exterior building modifications to the existing building located at 904 East Rawson Avenue with the condition that the stone belt line continue on the west elevation. And I think we can get the rest worked out, 42 inch, 36 inch. That's just construction details. That doesn't really matter. It's more of what will this look like? What are the materials used? If you're fine with the cement fiber board, you're fine with the stone panels, we can add the condition that you add the stone belt line on the west elevation.
Guzikowski made that motion.
Wait,
Awesome.
wait, before a second, I thought we said the west and the east.
Yes, you said
I
that.
just heard the west.
Well, right now, they're proposing the east, the south. The condition is just continuing that stone belt line also onto the west elevation, and then everything will be fine, assuming that we have a 3/4 approval. If we
Okay.
don't get a 3/4, then we're back to
All right.
square one.
Need a second.
I'll second. Are we clear on that motion? Yep. All right.
It's basically what he's got written right here, except for red. Third side.
I just added the condition that the west elevation has the stone belt line continue on the west elevation.
I just want to make sure the commissioners are clear and for the record. It's in there, right?
It's in there. I mean, it's going to be same height, all three sites.
Gotcha. Okay. Did we get a second? Chauncey, did you second that?
I didn't. Someone
All right,
did.
motion.
Okay.
Anna,
All right.
aye.
All right. Justin, aye. Roll call.
Clark, aye.
Bukavich, aye.
Guzekowski.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right.
Very good. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. And guys, we really got to repeat the motions. All right. Item 6F, review site and building plans by Dennis Vendetto, Time Equities, Inc. for an addition and exterior building modifications for a proposed home goods tenant space in the existing multi-tenant retail building at 8581 South Howell Avenue. Carrie? Or
As
Pete?
you mentioned, this is a request for facade modifications, including a loading dock addition on the west elevation of the existing building. This is for a new home goods store that'll be locating in part of the former Experience Fitness location, as well as the Get It Now location. For reference, Get It Now is going to be moved to the south side of the former Experience Fitness location. So where the doors were, where the entrance was, that's where Get It Now is going to move to. These are the existing and proposed elevations. So the top is the current condition of the facade, and what's being proposed is the home goods portion and then the Get It Now relocation on the south. So there are a couple of things to note. There are windows that are going to be removed for a new storefront entry for home goods, and the windows on that are existing on the sides of the current tenant space are going to be removed. There are 4 windows that will be replaced with spandrel. That's on the far south side of the proposed home goods location, which is just next to the Get It Now location. Staff did raise a concern for the replacement of clear glass with spandrel glass. However, the Plan Commission has the discretion to allow for this replacement, or if so, require that it be infilled with masonry to match the existing building. It's up to the Plan Commission. There are 2 new split-face CMU entry columns for the home goods entry, and that will be in a dark chocolate to match the existing brick on the building. The Nichiha fiber cement panel system in the bright white is the main parapet element that'll match in height to TJ Maxx. It will also be the location of the proposed sign for the home goods space. Per code, the use of fiber cement products requires a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission. You are really familiar with that by now. There will be some new EIFS that will match the existing, and some of the EIFS that's on the building is going to be what they call refreshed. It'll just make it look a little bit nicer. There's going to also be a standing seam metal awning in a red color above the home goods entry. If we move on to the loading dock, which is on the west side of the building, this is the area that we're talking about, and to the immediate west is the Springbrook Circle apartment complex. The reason that this particular detail is on the screen now is because it does call out for the loading dock to have 4 feet of chain link fence on top of the depressed area. And this elevation shows you what the loading dock would look like. Zoom in here and you can get a better idea of what they're proposing. The loading dock would be a single truck dock plus a compactor area. So this is what would be viewed from the west side. The expansion on the side would actually be painted split face CMU to match the building. Again, the chain link 4-foot fence on top of the depressed loading dock area. Since it is adjacent to a residential development, we did say that screening would be required, and staff did recommend that a masonry wall be used instead of chain link fence. One of the reasons is in consideration of the apartment complex to the west and the fact that the compactor would be outside, so it's trying to provide not only a screen for aesthetic purposes, it's also trying to kind of block some of the noise potentially, although staff did also mention that some of the noise concerns would be alleviated had we had a little bit more information regarding the proposed hours for the compactor. And they recognize that the noise ordinance would cover a lot of that as well. There are 3 dumpsters that were proposed in front of an existing electrical panel. Staff really highly recommends that the applicant confer with the electrical inspector to make sure that these proposed locations are going to be okay. However, there was one issue that staff raised as well with the dumpster locations, and that is that dumpsters by code are required to be in an enclosure. Now, information supplied by the applicant states that none of the tenants currently have their dumpsters in enclosures. So they provided some existing condition photos so that you can see what is existing for the vegetation on the apartment complex property, as well as what the rear loading dock area actually looks like now. So staff would highly recommend that we have these dumpsters in a consolidated area, preferably in an enclosure that meets code. However, again, this is something for the Plan Commission to determine, since this is an existing location with these existing conditions. This is an example of what the compactor would look like in the chain link fence on top of the loading dock wall. If there are no concerns and the Plan Commission believes that these improvements are acceptable, then there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans for exterior building modifications to the proposed home goods tenant space submitted by Dennis DiBenedetto, Time Equities, Inc. for the property at 8581 South Howell Avenue, subject to conditions 1 through 4. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. At this time, open it up. Questions from the commission. Chauncey.
I have a question for the applicant.
Name and address.
Adam Stein, architect with Logic Design and Architecture. I also do have Ryan here, a civil engineer, and Dennis as an owner representative.
Can you provide a little more information in regards to the chain link fence versus using a masonry material?
Sure. When we designed the exterior of the premises, we just looked at the existing conditions that were really there. The apartment complex is there. There's pretty significant landscaping that's already existing on site. And as we worked with Carrie and kind of evaluated the situation more, we actually think it might be a better solution to add in some lower level plantings between the two areas. So there's a pretty large area, and I actually printed off an aerial as well. I don't think I sent that to you. That shows a pretty dense area directly adjacent to where we're going to put in the loading dock area. It's primarily higher level trees, right? So and kind of in the mid level. But I visited the site actually again right before I came over here, and I feel like if we added a line of arborvitaes or something that's more of a condensed evergreen tree, I think that would actually kind of satisfy the screening concerns with all of the elements back there. Obviously, you know, the photos here show the existing conditions from TJ Maxx. There's nothing any of us can do about what those are now. The other photos that I included are all the existing dumpsters that are in the rear of the building. We had showed those on the plan that we submitted. It was actually a requirement of Home Goods. So as we're relocating Get It Now down, they have to bring their dumpsters with, and we have to provide evidence to the future tenants that the truck turns work to make the dock location accessible. So we're really not adding any dumpsters. We're just trying to consolidate them a little bit more.
As far as the plantings, is that ain't that the apartments property?
Well, there are two things to be concerned of. One, that you have permission from the apartment complex to add more screening if that's going to be something that you pursue. And two, to make sure that the existing fire hydrant in that location is not blocked by those plantings. And I don't know if there are any existing utilities that would be affected by the plantings. Brian, do you have any idea if there are?
Not off the top of my head, I don't. Just looking at sheet 4 here, it looks like we're less than 10 feet from the back of curb to the property line. to try and squeeze something in there.
So if the Plan Commission thinks that this is getting too far off base, then perhaps what we can do is talk about if the chain link fence is going to be acceptable, having some additional slats or covering on the chain link fence or something to have that more
Opaque.
opaque. You have the option of saying that the Plan Commission always has the authority to determine opacity of fencing. This is more for screening as an aesthetic. Probably not going to do a whole lot for noise.
Yeah, and I think that would be acceptable as well. Coming to the meeting, that was actually what we were anticipating, doing a slats in a chain link fence, or possibly doing a pressure treated wood or cedar or something along those lines. So more just throwing out the landscaping as a potential option. Aesthetically, the back of the building, personally, I would prefer not to add more masonry. The whole back of the building is that already.
I would tend to agree with you. The building's been there for 25 years.
Right.
I think I'd be okay with slats myself. But, going forward. As far as the dumpsters out all over the place, and this isn't your issue, but Pete, is that a zoning thing where we could go in and say, hey, get your dumpsters up near the building? I mean, they're just kind of hanging out there all over the place.
Well, it's been there before. These are the times we have the opportunity to
Yeah, as
to
we're
change
making a
it.
move, like get it now. I mean, they're going to be changing locations.
But they're not doing a modification to the building. They're just a tenant. They're to have say, okay, well, now the landlord has to create an enclosure for each of their tenant spaces as they move in. I don't think that that's going to be possible. Where here they're actually making modifications to the building. Ideally, I think it would be best if we could make the landlord modify all of their dumpsters and then make them compliant with code. But
Agreed, but I don't think we can do that now. I mean, we'd have to take it on a tenant-by-tenant basis as they move or come in.
you can't do it as a tenant because they're not making any changes to the site. It's when they make modifications to the site that you have the carrot and the stick kind of thing saying, hey, you want to do these modifications to the building? Well, then we'd like to see this legal non-conforming type condition become conforming.
Well, like
We
the
can't-
ones sitting out by the light post, can we get them closer to the building anyways?
We can ask. I mean, when it was part of the site plan review, we didn't identify, like when you go to see a site plan now, what do we see? What do we have? Here's your dumpster enclosure. We have this three-sided, we have a designated area. Back when this development was done, we didn't have that requirement, or if it, I don't know exactly what the rules were at that time, but I just don't think that it would, something that we can do on a tenant-by-tenant basis. I think it's when the landlord wants to do a modification to their building, we try to incorporate, better compliance with our current standards.
But I'm off subject anyways. It isn't Home Goods' problem. That's our problem.
Well, and if I can add on to that just a little bit, the dumpsters that are existing are not tied to one specific tenant. So that's another wrinkle in trying to enforce this new requirement,
And
shall
they're
we
just
say?
community dumpsters?
It's one of those things that multiple tenants use multiple dumpsters. I don't think that they are assigned to one specific tenant space. That's why you have them kind of spread throughout here.
Oh, okay.
I believe they're kind of shared locations, that there's several tenants that use certain locations. That's why they're located throughout the premises. So I would suggest generally too that that a requirement such as this should maybe be something that's more relative to the overall scope of the project, right? I mean, we're taking an existing Get It Now that has 2 vacancies that have been vacant for years and manipulating the entire area of the center. I mean, they're paying for an entire new build out of Get It Now just to slide them down to accommodate putting Home Goods in. One of the Home Good requirements is that we provide a dock. There's no way to get dock to work in the rear of the space without putting on a slight addition. I think the addition that we're calling for is like 400 square feet. It's literally as small as we can put on to accommodate the needs of Home Goods. So in the grand scheme of things, we're actually reducing the amount of dumpsters that are on site, right? Because Home Goods is going to come in, they're taking over multiple tenant spaces that were there prior and putting a compactor in that we've actually tucked behind the recessed dock. So on the plan, we do show a location for a potential of 3 dumpsters. I believe Get It Now has 1 right now. So in real life, you're going to see one.
Don't get me wrong. I think it's a vast improvement what's going on Anyways, okay, back to let's take care of the dumpster enclosure. Chauncey, I kind of cut you off, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. So can you give a little more information about the dumpsters in front of the electrical panel? Is this a safety issue
Yeah,
that we're trying to address?
the electoral area that's there right now is actually within a fenced enclosure. I think it's on one of those photos. So the clear space in front of it has already been defined to provide accessibility to it, and we're actually keeping all the electrical equipment there through this entire phase project. So we were proposing simply that the dumpsters could be located in front of that area so that the truck turns work.
And you're probably right, I would check with the electrical inspector.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
they need 3 feet of clearance in front of the panels.
Correct.
At all times, and the fence should be to code. If it's not, it must have been grandfathered, but that's been code forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably be okay, but I would double check with our electrical.
I think that was more the reason that staff brought up the dumpster enclosure requirement, not necessarily trying to consolidate all of the dumpsters for the entire building, but just to make sure that we are meeting the requirements and not putting something where it shouldn't go. But staff's not going to require something that doesn't make sense.
And then an additional question about the trash compactor. Can you give a little more information on safety coverage?
Well, so this is actually TJ Maxx's. So we were showing this photo more to demonstrate the precedence of the chain link fence that was there. This being so kind of closely exposed to the residents, we actually flipped our scenario on our site in the home goods. So we've taken the trash compactor and pushed it tight up against the building. And it also is at grade, so you won't, kind of the chute that you see coming down here, you won't actually have on the home goods. It'll come more directly straight out. So we were aware of the concerns that you had and tried to address them in the initial design.
Thank you.
Question on the compactor. Is there a noise level that you have with that, and also the operation hours that you'd be doing that?
Yeah, and that would all really be based on home goods themselves. As a tenant, obviously, with them being an occupant in the center, they would have to comply with all local noise ordinances and such. So we haven't actually inquired as to the specific information of the equipment they use or the hours that they use it, but it would be enforced like any other tenant, right?
I was just concerned about the tenants on the west side of that, that are right behind you
In the apartment area,
in
yeah.
the apartments.
I mean, I would suspect that the noise ordinance locally wouldn't allow it past, 9, 10 o'clock. I didn't specifically look into it.
You ain't gonna use it after closing.
I think that would be a requirement on the tenant, right? As part of the occupancy, they're responsible for following noise ordinances and everything else within the zoning.
What are the hours of home goods?
I'm not positive off the top of my head.
Probably till 9. Just as a guess, so.
It's
most
probably
likely
a,
they're not
probably a
gonna
9
use
to
it after.
9.
Well, there's already one there also
Yeah.
for TJ Maxx, so I mean, there's gonna.
Well, I think a fair assumption is Home Goods is owned by TJ Maxx, operated, same planning department, everything else. So it's probably very exactly the same,
similarities.
probably.
Having worked on them things, they're not that noisy.
Yeah. Right, and they're not necessarily run every time someone throws items into them. So
If you've ever been to where a dump and heard ours run, similar to that noise level.
If I can just add, from a code enforcement perspective, I always get the calls for noise. I have not received any complaints from that commercial development when it comes to the compactors. So currently, there's no issue with the noise regarding that matter.
Anything else, Fred?
Oh, that's it.
Chris?
Good to me.
What about you, Greg? Dawn? Brian? Christina?
I think the one other item, right, is the spandrel on the front.
Glass?
Yeah, which is the 4 glass windows. So as you look at the Get It Now elevation, there's kind of 6 windows way to the far right, kind of within their own bay. And you can see the line that comes down with the lease line. So Home Goods in their layout desires to have racking and a corner filler and everything along that front wall. they would prefer that those windows are actually removed entirely. So when we looked at the overall aesthetic of the front elevation, knowing the windows we're taking out and the windows we're putting in, it was our preference, just as designers, to keep those windows in. And we were planning to use like a dark bronze spandrel, which actually goes on the back side of the glass. So the glass continues to reflect. It really just looks like the lights are off. Putting clear glass there isn't an option. So as Carrie stated, the alternate solution would be to put more split face block there.
Commissioners, how do you feel about that? Any heartburn with the spandrel glass? I agree. I think it'll aesthetically, you know, if you go back to the main picture, it fits. Fits with the spandrel.
Good. And I don't, nobody needed the Nietzsche house sample.
I think we've seen enough.
It seems like you guys deal with that a lot. Yeah. It is a very good product, though. We design a ton of retail
No,
buildings.
it really is. And again, you know, Creek's going through different things here, and buildings such as this, you know, need some makeovers. So this is really a welcome addition to the city, and it's a product that we don't have. TJ Maxx is very successful here, and I see good things for the home goods store. So there's not many around. Maybe West Dallas. I can't think of another one close by. So I think it's a vast improvement to that particular building down there. Commissioners, anything? If not, I'd say we're ready to move. Motion?
Clerk moves the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans for exterior building modifications to the proposed home goods tenant space submitted by Dennis Benedetto, Time Equities, Inc. for the property at 8581 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. Number one, that all relevant code requirements are in effect.
Commissioner Lorick, I would move that we strike 2 and 3.
So struck. And number two, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, etc., are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Before we do the roll call, Mr. Di Benedetto?
Dennis Di Benedetto from Time Equities Incorporated, and I live in 29 Stevenson Lane in New Jersey. It shouldn't read that it comes from me. It should read our LLC. So I just wanted to correct that because I didn't personally submit this, but our LLC submitted this. So I just wanted to correct the.
Well, it should be submitted by...
It should read Oak Creek TEI Equities LLC, not Dennis Di Benedetto. I don't own the property, so I just want to make sure. I wish I did, but I did not. So.
Do we need that restated, or is that good? We got it on tape. Good.
Thank you
Everybody
so much.
concurs with the change? Okay,
Concurs.
thank you. We have a second. Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Dunstan, aye.
Carlo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay. Just before we conclude, I want to thank everybody for their hard work tonight. Staff, you performed particularly well because we had some issues to get over there. Thank you for your help. IT guy, nice job on the graphics there. Everything worked out really well. And commissioners, nice job. A lot of work tonight, but I think we got to the right place where we needed to be. So again, get out there, discover, and celebrate Oak Creek this week. Thank you to all, and adjournment, please.
Carrillo moves to adjourn at 8:44.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Dunstan, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.